Oh, can't hear you. There you are.
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to Drawing Down the Dragon. I'm Snappy, and thank you for joining me for our interview today with my good friend, spiritualist medium, Leslie Selene. How's it going, Leslie?
It's going good. We're getting there. I'm packing and cleaning, and we've got tickets, and we're on our way. We'll be in Crete by February 9th.
So amazing. For those of you who haven't been following along, this is the fourth interview Leslie and I have done together, and she is currently in the process of relocating to Crete in order to be more connected to the magical current and to work with people like Dr. Carla Ionescu and to really be involved in the magic. So that's so
And
beautiful.
being near family. My family's there.
Yes, exactly. To be in your family, to go and be in a nice, safe place with your dad, to live in a beautiful tropical island, right? It sounds like a dream
And,
come true.
seeing everything in Greek letters is going to make it easier, for me, my learning style. The
Right, right,
2D thing is just, it's real hard for me. And so that's what I'm up against trying to understand the calendar. Is
right.
because when I was a kid, I had to translate between the real calendar that I saw that was circular and spherical, and it was the all the plants and in the area I lived and the animals. They had a certain season you see all the chipmunks, another season you see all the baby hawks, and so this calendar of mine was very much a living thing, and
Mhm.
it was tied to the land, and I had to check back and forth between this all these squares. They just messed with me. And so it's kind of funny that I had to make a timeline to really understand where I am on the calendar. But I did. I had to make a timeline, and I want to make sure everyone knows that this isn't anyway. It's a circle. I'm not going linear on you. It's good that I'm organized. We're gonna have a time limit this time, and I have a list to go through. But the
Why?
the point for me is to get back to this organic sense of time that is the real one, right?
Right.
And we're all just waiting to be able to live this close to the earth life, and that includes our concepts of time and the passage of time. And
So let's take a moment and break this down because this is a really important kind of idea and something that we've been talking about over the course of our interviews. But this is essential artistic work for you in the moment where you're trying to recreate the calendar because, as you've said, is that our current calendar, right, is it's it's based on this Romulus calendar that then is
well,
reinterpreted by
first of
Numa
all,
and then
I had
reinterpreted by the
no
Caesars.
intention of getting all tripped out on this. This
Right,
was not on my list of things to get interested in. This is first of all is mandate of the muse. Like, and
right,
they're dictating a story to me, and all of a sudden I realize I got to know more about what is a calendar first of all before I go forward with this, because what they're proposing to me is that we have the most half-assed calendar in our own history, literally half-assed. The first
right.
half is named after gods we no longer worship, and the second half is just
Numbers.
random numbers, literally,
Yeah.
that don't have any relationship with the sequence, right? And so this has to affect the way we think and feel about time. right? Like September doesn't just suck because school starts. It's because that's when the lies begin. It is not the seventh month, and it's never going to be. And if you're a little bit neurodivergent, this drives you crazy. Like it's collective hallucination,
Right.
and it has to do with why everyone is like, don't let it hit you on the way out at the end of the year because we're just sick of this pretending. It makes no sense, and it's not that hard to make a new one. But I wanted to start at the beginning. Even though Kim Tallbear says we are not your dead ancestors, we know perfectly well that right now there are many, many calendars in use on planet Earth. But the business calendar is the Gregorian, so we've all been forced to use it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I want
Hail
to go back to
capital.
the dawn of time here. 500,000 years ago, there's a split. And so you get Homo sapiens developing over here. You've got Homo erectus, you got Java man over here, and you got Neanderthal over here. They split and then they don't mix until later.
Right.
So Neanderthal is really flourishing 400,000 years ago to 40,000 years ago. Early man is already way more successful than us. This is a long time that they're
Hmm.
flourishing. And during this time, the use of fire becomes widespread. So now we're up to 40,000 years ago, but we have to go back because the first calendar is 75,000 years ago in South
Right.
Africa. And that's
Yeah,
our
this is
first
heavily
slide.
contested, but you did. We'll bring up
It
this image
is,
here because you showed
and
me. You
all
sent me
these
this beautiful
numbers
image
can
here.
change. You know,
Right.
if 50 years ago they thought all the numbers were different, and 50 years from now they're going to think all the numbers are. This is why I have dyscalculia because it doesn't make any sense in the first place. Anyway,
Right.
they say this is the oldest one. It's in South Africa. It's one of a bunch. There's a bunch of them all over, and this is just the
Right.
biggest, the most important one.
Yeah, this one
And
is called Adam's calendar, and it
it's
is
called,
a solar calendar.
yeah,
And from what I've read about it, just looking briefly into it, it's
Adams after the Bible. So already we're
right.
listening.
Exactly. And then, my thing that goes off is you have a fairly accurate solar calendar. This is not, when we're going back into the ancient past, there seems to be a predominance of lunar calendars or lunar and solar
Lunisolar.
calendar.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't really see too many pure solar until you get
Well,
into the
first
more
first of
later
all,
era.
these are full body experiences.
Right.
This is a community event, and you're waiting for that one ray of sunshine to break through the darkness. That's the event. And your calendar is about that. And so go to the next one, and
Mhm.
that'll show you the lines that it's oriented with. And so, so this is about agriculture, this and it's about community. And
Right.
the calendar is something that we experience together with song and dance. So this is a three-dimensional thing, and we make it a four-dimensional thing with our spirit. And this is our experience 75,000 years ago.
Right.
65,000 years ago, for context, first recorded Aboriginal presence in Australia. 50,000 years
Wow.
ago, Homo sapiens travels out of Africa and interbreeds with Neanderthal. 30,000 years ago, that's when we have the Ishango bone. That's the first calendar we have that is a woman clocking her cycle on a bone. And we have the Venus of Willendorf around then. We have cave paintings. So go ahead to the next slides. There she is. Then we have the next one is the cave paintings.
What's so wild too, I just wanted to point out, like the Venus of Willendorf, there are other versions
They're
that
all
we've
over.
found like in the years in near modern day Israel that some people think were created by Neanderthals and they predate Homo sapiens,
Yeah,
so the
that's
goddess
the
worship
thing.
is older, potentially older than humanity as we know it,
Well, yeah. And then we go to the next one. We got these handprints all over the caves, and this is all over the world. All over the world, the handprints are done like this. And we know there are women painting the paintings because of the hands.
Yeah, the
And
shape
this
and
is
size.
some kind of measurement of time. Yeah, your handprint.
Mm. Well, we know that for sure, right? Because the hand is how we develop all of our base numerical systems. You know,
Yes.
some cultures do it by threes,
Yeah.
going and counting the knuckles. A
Yeah.
lot of people are base five based upon the
Yeah.
5 digits, but the
Your
hand as an
hand and your
embryonic device
and your
is two,
menstruation. And during
right?
this time, we're still battling saber-toothed tigers and giant sloths.
Right.
Yeah. This is ages ago.
Mammoths aren't fully gone yet.
No, mammoths still, we're still with the hanging out with the mammoths until 10,000 years ago.
Right.
20,000 years ago, we have the first recorded footsteps in North America. Now, there's another paper that's been published that proposes it's 130,000 years ago. This is about when Homo sapiens became Homo sapiens 130,000 years ago.
Right.
And they're saying, look, they were messing with the mammoths. Somebody was on mammoths in North America 130,000 years ago. Anyway, so 20,000 years ago, we get the footprints, right, in New Mexico. And around
Mhm.
that time in Australia, we get the Wurdi Yuang stone arrangement. So go to the next one. And nope, that's a 30,000 years old bone calendar. It's another one in France. It's not the Ashango bone. But again, it's a
Okay.
woman tracking her cycle. She's either wants to get pregnant or she doesn't.
Right.
And this is the Wurdi Yuang. It's in Victoria, and it also has archaeoastronomical significance. This, again, we're talking about things that are currently in use, like the sites in Guatemala and Belize that had never stopped being in use. It
Right.
didn't fall into disrepair ever. And so then we get to 12,000 years ago. So that's the that's the orientation of the Woiwurrung, the Aboriginal stones in Victoria. And then the next one, this is a calendar that is etched on one of those T-shaped pillars in Gobekli Tepe.
Yeah, this is
It's
I've seen this one. It's highly
12,000
debated,
years
like
ago.
all the things in Gobekli Tepe, but it seems to have solar alignment and it seems to have some kind of animal system connected to this. You know,
Yeah,
there's some scholars who are arguing that it's related to the Babylonian astrology, which, as we know, then
it's way
evolves
before.
into the
This way before.
Greco-Egyptian,
Way
right?
before. So
But
this
there's
is
similar
right at the
parallels,
end of the last glacial period of a
right?
very long ice age. The thaws are coming, and people are coming out of their hidey holes, and the community is all of a sudden is diverse, and then we start getting these unifying structures. Then 10,000 years ago, that's 12,000 years ago. 10,000 years ago, the woolly mammoth goes extinct. Finally, it thaws enough that the woolly mammoth, it's too hot and they die. And then we get the Velletri Pebble calendar. That's the first one in the area around Rome. And again, it's a woman tracking her cycle. Then
Mhm.
we get this 10,000 years ago, we got Cheddar Man in the UK. So go ahead. There. So this guy is 10,000 years old, and that guy is his direct descendant.
It's so wild how incredible DNA is. Like
It
you can
is.
see the similarities,
Yeah.
in the bone structure,
So
in the nose. It's
everywhere,
wild.
especially places like UK and Italy, there's sea people heaven. You come, plunder, you go. People come and go. Different tribes came and went, and their Cheddar Man stayed, right? So there was not like they came and there was nobody there. There's these guys. and
Right,
and and these are the Aboriginal folks of the UK. And you have that also in the Italic Peninsula. Increasingly, they're saying that the
the Gallic
Villanovan
people.
people, the
Yeah,
predecessors to the Etruscans, they're Apo.
yeah.
And
There seems to be a connection between the Etruscans and the Gallic peoples. At least a shared kind of
the
like the calendar
Etruscans
system.
are an inclusive culture, and so you get waves of everybody. There's
Right,
Black Etruscans, there's Northern European Etruscans, there's Etruscans from all over the Mediterranean, and they come in waves. There's the Lydians, and then and so that's the beauty of an inclusive society is that they go test the DNA and it's all over the place.
right.
So this
This is
Cheddarman people, these Abo people, they had this weird calendar where you hibernate in the winter. There's no marking of time in the winter. They didn't even care about the solstice. They didn't care about that at all. They're just going inside because it's called, oh, they have songs about the wind and the wolves, and they got no mention
It's interesting you
of
bring that up
souls.
because we see similar cultures throughout the Alps, like in the French Alps, for example. There were traditional groups that hibernated all the way up until the 1800s. They
Yeah,
continued to practice, until it
yeah.
became no
So they
longer
didn't need a
viable.
calendar in the winter,
No, but that's
right?
so interesting. We think this is an animal thing, but there were peoples who hibernated.
Depending on the weather, it makes perfect
Right.
sense. And this
Yep.
same 10,000 years ago is when the Scythians start to appear.
Mm,
And the Scythians then, until from 10,000 years ago until 2,500 years ago, they go back and forth across the steppes. And they get horses and they sell them, and they get horses and they sell them, they get horses, until everybody has a horse, right?
right.
And, despite Greek rumors of their extermination, they did continue to exist and may still actually in the Altai Mountains.
Right. Well, there's all these kind of debates about who becomes the Scythians were such a wide tribal group, and it's very clear that many of their ideas and cultures survived. The
It's
Altaic
clear
peoples were
that
clear,
they were
you know.
matricentric,
You know,
matrilineal.
a,
The women were warriors, that kind of thing. But we
a
have
lot of
other
debate about the
examples of that.
Kurds, for example. The Kurds practice a more matriarchal culture. They have a kind of a pagan lineage, and they
So,
seem to have an anarchistic
yeah,
sort of societal bent as well. So there's
yeah.
some interesting connections.
So then we get to 8 to 3,000 years ago. We see the contemporaneous rise and fall of the Pelasgians, the Vinca, and the Cucuteni Triptych civilizations. These are all matrilineal mother goddess worshiping societies. So let's go to the next one. As far as academia is concerned, the Cucuteni Triptych are the only ones that are certified.
Right. They all debate about,
So we had enough data and enough papers written about that data, enough papers approved, peer approved, that they got certified. And then what happens? The
mhm,
USR, they didn't like that. They didn't want their roots to be Amazons, to
matriarchal.
be matrilineal circular societies that so this became a suppressed history, as Max Dashu calls them. These are suppressed histories then. And they anyway, all these guys are making these little idols, but fertility idols, and then go to the next one. They have this pottery. They do weaving, they do pottery, they're living in peace. And then the next one, yeah. Now that up until now, your calendar is a 3D thing. It's a community event. It's about singing and dancing, and you're honoring the changes of the seasons. And now the Sumerian, the Babylonian, and the Egyptian calendars, they emerge around the same time. These are 2D calendars, and they're state sponsored calendars. This is a state thing.
Right.
And
Right.
so that's when you get it first. And so that's like 5,000 years ago. So during the time, right? The Cucutenis and the Pelasgians, they're like 8,000 to 3,000 years ago. So at the peak of that, right? Then you got your Minoans, you got your calendars over here, your 12-month guys over here. You got Stonehenge, Poggio Rota, Iceman, the Sardinian Nuragic civilization, and the Mycenaeans. And they come in around the middle of that Cucuteni Pelasgian period, and then it all continues until about 3,000 years ago. So the Stonehenge, we now know, is not built by Cheddarman,
No.
and it's not built by the subsequent waves of Franks and Steppes people that came. This was built by a seafaring people that had need to know about astronomy. The reason you're looking at the stars is because you're in the middle of the sea. That's
Hmm.
what you really need, the stars. Otherwise, Cheddarman, he don't need that. He's just the moon is enough for his
Right.
existence. These guys come, they build this colossal freaking thing, and then after about 100 years, they leave. And the subsequent people who come in there, they don't even know what it's for.
This is
They
why, like our
don't.
good friend, Old Boy. I mean, he's very, very academic, but he kind of is arguing for this direct connection to like the British Isles and the Pelasgians, and he believes like at least they made it to the Tin Isles, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because these are the people doing this megalithic stuff, the Sardinian Nuragic civilization, and they're moving big rocks, and they're drilling holes in big rocks that curve.
Well,
They
and we
they're
have
doing some kind of plumbing that we don't understand anymore.
when we look at
Already, when Romulus and Remus, it's already ancient history. This, and they already don't get
yeah,
it.
right. And I just keep thinking too, it's like, okay, one of the crazy things too, when we're looking at this idea of the temple and of the calendar, right? The word temple in the
It
Roman
has to do with
language, right? It
time.
comes
Yeah.
to it comes to us, right, from templum, which literally means to cut out, right? The whole idea of this word tem, right? And in time and tempora and tempus, when you're dealing, right, this all connects us to the cult of Saturn. This is Pelasgian
It's
stuff.
close. And
This is
so, okay,
Cronus.
here's your
Yeah.
here's your Sumerian astronomy. The Egyptians are using three calendars by now. That 4,500 years ago, they're using one astronomical calendar for this, for the people who do travel. They're using a lunar calendar for that's an agrarian calendar, and then they've got a lunisolar one. So let's see the next picture. Everybody knows what Stonehenge looks like, but this is Poggio. This is the Etruscan Stonehenge. It's much smaller, but it's an astronomical calendar. And it fell into disrepair, fell into disuse, and now people are using it again to celebrate. So
Beautiful.
let's see. Then what do we got? Oh, go to the next one. That is the Pozzo di Santa Caterina. It's in Sardinia. This is one of those structures from way back this time, 5,000 years ago. In the entrance there, that's very measured steps going all the way down to a little pool. And then you see that dot, that looks like where the clitoris should be. There's a hole in there, and the moon shines into the pool every 18 and a half years.
Okay, that is so insane and so wild,
Yeah.
because there's this really interesting thing I was reading about the Nazca in Peru. Okay, the
Yeah.
Nazca in Peru, and this is something that the tribal peoples, they were practicing this until fairly recently, but the
Yeah.
practices kind of died out. So what they used to do is when they would take a shaman, a child, either a girl or a boy, they'd keep them locked in the darkness for 18 years until the
Oh,
sun aligned and it would spark them, and then they were allowed to come out and worship the sun, and then they would become the leader of the sun cult. And there's this
that
whole thing
sounds
that
terrible. Who would do that? It's
yeah,
like the Spartans. What are
right,
you
but there is
doing?
this whole idea that they were in the womb for all this time, and then when they come out they have this grander appreciation of the sun,
I would
and
believe that it's allegorical, that there's an
yeah.
initiation that takes that long to do. Definitely, because there's something going on with that, with the moon
Mm.
having there's a cycle that's 18 and a half years.
Well,
So
I imagine it
interesting.
probably comes out of like we see with a lot of these religions, where at first it's allegorical and then it turns into this one-upmanship
Somebody
of
goes and
purity.
tortures a
Then a
kid
couple
like that.
people
Yeah.
do it and then no one else ever does,
Right.
like you see with those Buddhist guys who turn themselves into statues. We have like 3 or 4 people who've
Oh,
done this, a pretty insane thing, but like, it did happen. You get this within religions where people are trying to prove themselves.
it
I
takes
mean,
all
humans are
kinds.
humans. Right?
Well, so all that stuff lasts until about 3,000 years ago. And then it just kind of peters out. And then we have the founding of the Amasir Nation, the
Mm.
Maghreb nomads. And this is arguably the origin of the name of the Amazons, because here we also have women are warriors. The women decide when you get married and when you get divorced. The women own all the property. The men are veiled, the women are not to this day. And go to the next one. Oh, that's the one in Spain. See, these stone circles, they're all over the place. They're all over the Mediterranean. It's not just Stonehenge and Poggio. They're all the way across Russia to Japan. There's one in Japan from the same period. So go to the next one.
Right? The seafaring peoples were so much more widespread than we ever give them credit for. Like, people made it to North America. They made it to all of the islands, like
And
come
one of
on.
these is way up on the Finnish Russian border, and the Sami people still use it. It is
Mm,
characteristically of of the mentality, I think, of that upper latitude Northern European. It's a bizarre one. It doesn't have any order that anyone can recognize. It looks like abstract sculpture, but they
mm,
seem to know what to do with it. But this is a rock painting for this right when the Amazigh people are forming an identity at least, and then the next picture. These are dropouts. The Amazigh they're not interested in industrialization, and so they make their oils and everything the way they've always made them, and that's the way they want to live. Next one. And for them, the 2026 is 2975. They use the Gregorian calendar. That's basically when they stopped listening to us. After that, they're like, okay, that's it. We're not adapting to you anymore. Anyway,
right,
so they get their start about 3,000 years ago. And this is when the Villanovan culture starts to flourish, the predecessors of the Etruscans, who also, like the Scythians, were matrilineal. And also, like the Scythians, they were reported extinct, but they weren't.
right.
So go to the next one. That is the Roman calendar, and it has the astrology in the middle, and then it has a row of gods on the top, and then it has a bunch of numbers, and it has pegs. And you take a peg out, you know, to tell
Right.
yourself where you are.
It's
And then
interesting.
the next one, that
Oh,
is
the
the
hero spec.
Etruscan, that is
Yeah.
the Liber of Piacenza. There's a calendar on there. The
Ooh,
Etruscans by that time are using a 12-month calendar, but this is already way past us. There's a big gap in where we don't really have any evidence.
mm,
And that's a Greek archaic period, which is like 28, 2,500 years ago. And Numa Pompilius is operating during this period. Like we have it in our heads, it goes, Greeks, then Romans, then Jesus. That's not how it goes at all. There's all this
no,
overlap. The Romans, by the way, never conquered the Etruscans, period. The Etruscans were way bigger than the Romans until the Greeks conquered them both.
right.
And then they separate out later, and later the Etruscans are like, fine, if you want to call us all Romans, whatever, but they are still the dominant culture in the region. And so, yes, they had a 12-month, this is like from 400 BC. And then the next one,
This is one of those things though I got to talk about just because
oh,
this is
yeah,
something that's been
it's a good,
so vilified because in modern Christian, this was so the Haruspex was the high priest in the Etruscan rites, but
yeah,
they were also a diviner. And one of the essential things that they would do is divination through the liver. So
yeah.
they would take the liver, and this is actually a
The
recreation
liver
of
of
the
a
liver.
sacrificed animal, and then you boil it up. Yeah,
Yeah, and what they would do is they would read the bumps on the liver,
yeah.
and this would tell them when things are going to happen in
They're
the
doing
future.
divination on with the liver, and then they have a calendar. So it's like
Yeah,
different parts of the liver. So it's
correspond
the
to different dates and
predecessor of
times.
phrenology. But the Etruscans were so not exterminated that the late stage Roman emperors were still calling these guys.
Right, right. Yeah, well, because the Latins themselves, and this is something the Latins talk about in all of their literature, they're not a philosophical or really deeply religious culture. you know, they're constantly upset about this. And so
Well,
they're
I'm
always
convinced
looking
that
for
Romulus
others.
was literate, and I will explain to you why.
Hmm. You think Romulus was literate?
Illiterate, yeah.
Illiterate. Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay.
Absolutely. There's no question in my mind, or we would not be in the kerfuffle that we are currently in.
Okay.
This is the earliest Roman calendars. They're from 50 to 80 BC. They're attributing their calendar to Numa. They've got
Mhm.
astrological symbols in the top. And so we've got this really big gap where people are telling us things about calendars that we have no evidence of. Right? So
There's
Numa
also
Pompilius is the guy who invented January. He's living
right.
2,700 years ago, right
Mhm.
at the founding of Rome. So halfway between us and Stonehenge, you get January.
Yeah. We got to talk about Janice though, because Janice is such a weird and interesting figure. And it seems to be I've been doing my deep dive, the muse has been sending me into Janice, okay? And
Hmm.
Janice seems to be a creation of Romulus. And this seems to be about uniting the various tribal groups.
Janus is a North African god.
It's the god of the moon. And it
It's the
like there's
gateways. It's the gateways. It's the
right
crossroads. He's the dark rider
there
at
seems
the
to be this
crossroads.
twisting of the hecatic magic again. You're masculizing that force.
This
You're
is the
hiding that
thing that
force.
Numa does, and we know he does this. He has a theory that inclusivity will produce peace, and he
Right.
tries it out, and it works.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
calendar, see, okay, so the Greek classical period is way later. The Mayan calendar is 300 BC. The Aztec calendar is only 500 years old. Uh, the Chinese adopted their calendar in 480, around the start of the Greek classical period.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got Julius Caesar's reform. He didn't even take the throne until 100 BC, so that's 600 years after Numa.
Right.
The Julian reform is in 46 BCE. 54 years later, we get Anno Domini, which is the problem. This is why I have to make this list, because it's so confusing to have to count backwards and forwards
Well, there's
at
also
Jesus.
there's also
In the
this
Asian
issue of
countries,
progression.
they keep the lunar calendar because they're not into
Right.
these stray days and the leap years and stuff. It doesn't work for them. They're like, forget it. Until real recently.
But like, so much of Janice has been obscured. I want us to read over what the so one of my
Okay,
favorite
but let me
sources.
say first
Yeah.
Romulus. He
Right.
institutes the Cheddarman calendar
Mm-hmm.
with the hibernation period. There's only 10 months, which is why you wind up with 7 as September. So, what they're telling us, though, and it doesn't make sense to me, but none of this does. So, they're
Mm.
saying that Romulus named March, April, May, and June, and that later on Numa named January and February. This makes no
Right.
sense because then they count 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They go back to a numerical. For me, Romulus had the numerical. That's the only thing that makes sense. Is
Right.
he had number 1 month, number 2 month, number 10, and now everybody goes sleep for a while, and then we wake up in the springtime again. Cheddarman
Mm-hmm.
calendar. Numa is the one naming 3 masculine gods, then 3 feminine gods, and they're from different traditions. All of them. The Janus is coming from downstairs, and Fabrus is coming from upstairs. And then you've got the Greek Mars, and then you've got the Etruscan name for Aphrodite. Then you've got a Greek goddess named Maya, and then you've got Juno, who's very Roman. This to me, this is not the mind of Romulus that is doing this.
Mm.
This has to be all Numa. But then we stop. Then we stop
It's
because
also a
it's too
weird
much
thing
for
though.
us. And we
We got to
revert to the old numbers. 7, 8, 9,
yeah,
10. Like it doesn't even matter.
we also got to talk about though, because there's an issue, Numa's calendar ends for a reason, and it
Does
ends
it?
because of religious corruption. So
That's what I'm talking about.
what ends up happening is they
They
have a
bury it and
floating
then they burn it.
well they have a floating so in the stories they talk about this. There's a floating series
Mm.
of days because they don't do a
Mm.
leap year. So
For
what they
one
do
thing,
is
he's
they
wrong about a lot of things. Like if we go back and adopt the
yeah,
Newman
but
calendar, we're going to be screwed up because
just
there's
let
too
me
many leap
yeah,
days. There's a 9-day week. The Babylonians send
yeah.
emissaries to Rome for centuries, trying to get these people onto 7-day weeks so that we can all work together. And the Romans are like, no, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we're still trying to.
Yeah, so they
But
but the
go to the
point
next one
is
because Janice, you wanted
yeah,
to
so
talk about
yeah,
Janice.
I got to finish this point and then we'll
Okay.
get into Janice. So the
Yeah.
point though that I'm making is the reason why Caesar gets rid of the Numa calendar is
Right.
because there is a leap month, and this is something that the augurs get to.
It's all
So
screwed
the
up.
person who is representing Numa, the high priest, the pontiff Maximus, gets to decide when the month comes in and where the month would fall. And so at first, this is not a problem, but by the later empire period, the pontiff is totally a corrupt ass, and they're using this to extend their power, to force elections, to do all kinds of wild
Well,
stuff.
and
So
here's your problem with
Caesar's
state-sponsored
hand is
calendars,
forced,
because
you
this
know?
whole time, the megalithic calendars are still in use.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the real calendar to people.
Right.
This is just a money calendar, like something they have to deal with
Well,
because
it's
of a
also
state.
deeply connected to the state religion, you know, and like Numa sets up the rites of closing and opening the gates of the Temple of Janus and marking the beginning of year in January and the ending of the year in February. And
Yeah.
and you know, you have this birth of the child to come with the birth of Dionysus and Saturn during the Saturnalia, and then in February of the Feralia, which is or the Parentalia, the dead, you know, the festivals of the dead. So there's this all of this powerful magical stuff, and then the leap month seems to be when it was instituted, it was supposed to be a time of like extreme austerity and religious practice, you know, but a lot of this has
So
been
Bruce is the
obscured and
god of
lost.
purification, and that's the whole thing.
Right.
So go to the next one, because
Mm-hmm.
Janus is important. No, this is the lunar calendar, and then the next one is another
Mm.
Chinese lunar calendar. It has the I Ching symbols on it. They're integrating their own systems, and then the next one, this is
Oh, you got
Janus.
Venus.
And then I have two more images of Janus. Sometimes three faces, sometimes a young
Right.
man and an old man. And then the next one is cool. This one is they use it in modern magic. This is Diana and Pan.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
Diana, Ianus is how you say it. Diana is maybe also Janus.
yeah, of course she is.
Yeah.
So this is getting into when we really get into the Hecatic magic, into Apollo and Diana. The big secret seems to be that, you know, that word Hecate, what does it mean? To shoot light afar, right?
Yeah.
Who is Apollo? He's Hectobolos, the one who shoots the light afar.
Yeah.
Who is Diana? Hecate, the one who's shooting the light afar,
This
but
is
in a
basically
masculine and
distance
feminine
energy
guise.
healing, is what that means.
Well, it also means the light of the moon, and it has to do with this power of seeing and the hidden light in the darkness. But
It's
Apollo and
web weaving.
Diana are
Magic
the
is web
twins
weaving.
of the great. This gets us back into the Akalarentia stuff because they're the twins of the Great Mother, the children of the
Yes.
Great Mother. And in the earliest traditions, like I'll bring this up here, when we look at Janus in
Yeah.
the earliest traditions, like you're talking about how they turn it into Pan and Diana. Well, we see this in the earliest versions. They're not using those Greek names, but they're using a Roman name. Let me bring this up here.
Yeah, there's the male female one, and then there's the old man, young man,
Yep,
and then there's some
the
that have
twins,
many of the same faith.
right?
And
And
this is
sometimes it's three.
consistent with the African Eshu, African Elegant, as is much
But yeah, let
previous.
me read this here, and we'll get a sense of
Yeah,
just how wild Janus gets. This is one of the
yeah,
most best sources for ancient Roman stuff that you can find. He gives you all of the direct references as well. So the Dictionary of Greek and Roman Mythology, or biography and mythology. So for Janus, it says Janus and Janna, a pair of ancient Latin divinities who were worshipped as the sun and moon,
yeah,
whence they were regarded as the highest of the gods and received their sacrifice before all others. The name Janus is only another form of Dianus and
yeah.
Janna of Diana, but the ancients connected it with Janua, the door, for it was also applied to a covered passage with two entrances as the Janus Medius in the Forum. The fact of Janna being identical in port with Luna and Diana is attested beyond a shadow of a doubt by Varro. And I don't have that particular passage here, but if you were to go to that passage of Varro, Varro talks about the calendar, and he talks about how Janus is the 13th day and the 13th month. And if you know from the Greek tradition, the 13th month of the lunar calendar is Hecate, and the 13th day is Hecate. This is the
Beautiful,
crossroad. And it
beautiful.
connects us again to that Trinity deity that's at the
Yes,
heart of the chthonic aspect of this tradition,
this is
which
the
is
Lord of chance and probability.
right. It's the Great Mother and the twins.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the Great Mother Force is the voice that's hidden in the darkness. That's why sometimes Janice has a third eye, right? Because it's that Hecate force is hidden, but the
So
twins are
there's
present.
there's
You
the
know?
reason that Numa puts the beginning of the year at January instead of
Mm,
March is because it's the new sun. The
right,
sun dies and the new sun. So we're moving from a lunar to a solar lunar
right.
perspective. Then this is where he is manipulating mythology to social effect, like the ancient
Mhm.
pharaohs used to do. He's
Absolutely.
like, I don't want to be king, but if you make me be king, I'm gonna trick everybody into being peaceful.
Yeah,
That
he's
was
trying to
his
create
whole
law.
thing. I will brainwash you into not killing each other.
But this is why, like someone like Cicero, who's much later, considers Numa Machiavellian,
Well,
considers him
yeah,
like not really religious, but as like someone who is trying to construct a
because he's
social order.
autistic, because he's ADHD. He's going at it from a bird's eye view. That's
Yeah.
the only way he can see it. The only way he can even conceive of dealing with this is he has to go out in the wilderness and really think it through for like 20 years. And then maybe he could handle it. But he's gonna have to have a plan, right? Or this is just insane. So, and that's why it matters. That's why it matters what calendar we're using, what calendar is our inner reference for what a calendar is. That's why it matters that we use the okay, next slide. There's modern ones.
Oh yes, right. We did. I did include the modern ones here.
There's new ones. This is Side Hill Stone Circle.
Sorry, here we go. Oh,
That Side
did you
Hill,
want
that
to
was for Bruce.
for
And
Bruce?
we'll
Right,
get there.
February.
The Side Hill Stone Circle is built in 1979 in Glasgow, Scotland. People go there and they use it. The next one, University of Massachusetts Amherst Sunwheel completed in 2000. People go do juju there. You can do that. Next one, the Australian Standing Stones in New South Wales, 1992. And then the last one is pretty cool, crazy looking.
Oh wow.
Arctic Henge. It's in Rofferhofen, Iceland, completed in the late 90s. There are also a bunch of private ones people have in their yard. But if you ever get a chance or the urge, go, because it's something in your body. It's very satisfied by waiting for that one ray of sunlight. And then everybody's like, yay.
When you
Like
go to
it's,
Crete, you gotta go. You got okay. One thing you got to do and take pictures of, because I need to vicariously live for the through you, is you got to go to the labyrinth at Mycenae where the big horns are, and when the
ugh,
sun and the horns line up, which is on every Islamic flag that comes from
so
Crete,
cool.
you can go see that original spot where they would sacrifice the bull, right? And the sun still lines up there.
Well, you'll have to come visit.
I will have to
Um,
come visit.
so in Japan, it's year 8. In the Chinese lunar calendar, it's the year 4724. In North Korea, it's 115. And in Ethiopia, it's 2019. Ah. So the thing is we can do anything we want with this. If
Right.
we wanna correct this really big mistake of the ninth month being called 7, etc., which is driving neurodivergence insane since Numa. Um, we can call those months anything we want. Did you know that? Like, the thing is, I'm gonna have to learn everything I can learn about this, and then I'm gonna have to shut up and get out of the way and let the spirits speak.
Yeah.
Because what I think
Yeah.
they're going to
You know,
do
you're
is they're
starting
going
to
to give
remind
me
me.
names for the rest of the months.
You're
And
starting
to
to
the
remind me.
degree that I'm full of shit, it's going to be wrong. The degree that I'm thinking about it. So the degree
Right.
that I get out of the way and let it happen, they're going to dig it up later and find out that's what they were
Well,
called.
this is inspired artistic creation. You know, it makes me think. I have an ongoing project I've been working on. You know, where I've been connecting to the tarot cards and trying to translate the tarot cards into divinities. You know, my idea is I look at this. Well, the tarot is kind of structured like this, but a lot of it has been lost, right? And I think it was the original intention is that the tarot represents the unfolding of the tree of life and an entire temple in and of itself. And it's supposed to describe all aspects of divinity and of the spirits. So I should be able to remap this in a way where I can use these as portals to speak to specific divinity, you know? And you can do this to a certain extent with the tarot. Like some cards are very explicit, you know, like the Magus is Hermes, the Fool is Dionysus. Dionysus rules over the tarot, and that's always been the case. But other cards are a lot more harder to pin down, you know, like the Alchemical Wedding, the Lovers card. A lot of people want to associate that with Aphrodite. I don't really see that as Aphrodite. It could be Dionysus or Attis.
Oh,
Sometimes it's
just
Eros, you
I
know?
did get one. September was Astrea, for
Oh,
sure,
wow.
for
For
sure.
sure. And
And
that's
then the
ninth month.
next one is her partner.
All right.
Yeah, it
Who's her
is.
partner?
I can't
Um,
remember. It's slipping my mind right now.
Estrella. Because Estrella is wild because she is Saturnian, right?
Astrea's female partner.
Oh, yeah. I don't know who's Estrella's partner. I'm gonna look this up. Maybe we can find this.
You know, later on they call them sisters, but it
Yeah,
not
DK,
before. DK,
DK.
yes,
So
yes,
yeah, Estrella and DK are
yeah,
often
yeah,
connected, right?
yeah.
And so that's in DK,
And
right?
then
We're
in
talking
some calendars you get Ophiuchus.
Ophiuchus, yeah, Ophiuchus, which is one of these lost, you know, that's an astrology sign that's been lost again. There's so many weird things, you know. When I was studying a while back, I got really
Because it was
into,
a leap month, I think. You know, some
yep,
years
a
you
leap
had
month.
it, and some years you didn't.
In some years you didn't, and this is a
Yes.
now we've instituted the leap day system, and we've totally lost all these leap months. You know, there used to be like literal years where it would be, okay, now's a time for rest. You got to rest for like 30 days and focus on the harvest and worship and stuff, you know, and that's all disappeared. One of the wild things that I learned when I was going into the astrology, you know, and I learned this from Helena Blavatsky of all people, was that, and then I found it confirmed in other sources, but in the earliest version of the Egyptian astrology, you know, or in the Greek, sorry, in the Babylonian astrology, sorry, um, there is no Libra. Libra doesn't exist.
Oh,
What you get is you get the sign of Scorpio, and what ends up happening is the
it's
Greek.
Libra wishful thinking.
Yeah, well, they split Libra in half. You have the claws become the scales of balance and becomes the force of justice, and the tail becomes the force of death. But ultimately, this is united. And when I think about the goddess as justice, she is the force of death. We've cut her in half. We've divided her. You know, we've split and taken apart this image. It's no longer a holistic image. You know, and
Well,
there's
that's
also,
the thing.
yeah,
Is that if I want to sell you a truckload full of chickens, we we can't be talking mañana, right? Like we have to meet at a certain time. There's a certain number of chickens. And then, ooh, I uncovered the first mistake in the book. I mentioned coins. There's no coins.
mm,
There's no coins in 730s BC. There's no
right,
coins in 700 BC. There's no coins until the Lydians mint these teeny tiny little electrum things in 400 something BC.
right,
So,
right,
no, what they had instead was these lumps of ore. The Romans used bronze, and they just did
right,
a little lump of bronze, and it's worth whatever it's worth today. And then for like really big deals, you maybe would use a silver lump or a gold lump, or if you're trying to send it light in a light way. But mostly they're just doing barter.
right.
So you don't really need a calendar until you have the little lumps of bronze to exchange and you get organized in this extra way. Otherwise, this shipment could have come, yesterday, today, tomorrow. It doesn't really matter. And
Well,
so the
you know,
calendar
and
wasn't that important.
it seems like it's interesting because we're talking, you know, the formation of the calendar is also synonymous, at least like the Roman calendar we see explicitly, it's synonymous with the formation of the state religion. And
Yes.
when I look at money, it comes out at the same time, and it normally it comes out of these bartering systems of war, but it also, the other place it comes from are from the religious systems, where usually when you would go to these pilgrimage sites, you would go and collect, especially to Aphrodite, you would go collect seashells, and then you would trade the seashells, saying that this was a
That's
sign
where
they
they
had
find
gone and
them.
done the
That's where they
pilgrimage.
find the little hordes of these lumps. Is they
Right.
find them at the temples and they
Yeah.
find them at the marketplace.
Right.
But see, the
And so,
Etruscans didn't give a shit. They're just bartering. The gold, they only want it for jewelry and dental
right.
work.
Right. But this Saturnian energy, this god Saturn, and Saturnia, that force of justice, Estrella, Dike, this energy all seems to be caught up, especially in Rome, with the creation of the temple, the religion, the creation of the calendar, and the creation of the monetary system. And we know that for sure throughout the entire Roman period, Saturn is the god of the banks and is in charge of all
So
of this.
when Numa takes the beginning of the year and puts it over here, it's not just about the new sun.
Right.
The beginning for a guy like Romulus is the when action happens. It's the
Mm-hmm.
spring. It's when the plants come up.
Right.
That's not the beginning for a guy like Numa.
No.
Things begin in the silence and in the dark.
Right.
It begins with a choice. This is the most powerful thing. He takes a impulse being the beginning. No, my friend. It begins with a choice in the silence of your heart. And then the second thing you're going to do is you're going to purify. The second month is Februs, which is a Sabine and an Etruscan god of purification. It's when you
Right.
fast. That's why we have Lent. It's because of Februs.
Right. Right. And you have the, in Rome, you had the Petronalia, you had the Laurentalia, you had all of those festivals of contacting the dead and
You
giving offerings
set
to the
an
dead.
intention. Then you
Yeah.
contact the dead and you purify. You fast and you pray. And only then do you act.
Right. And this is really
Huge.
interesting too, because, the Roman Saturn is far more connected to Dionysus. And we know this. I mean, Saturn and Dionysus are one and the same, even in the Greek tradition, but it's far more explicit in the Roman tradition through like the Saturnalia of Macrobius. When you read it, he just
Saturday
tells
Night
you.
Nights to me is like when I was in Japan in the 1980s, and like up until 5 o'clock, everyone was like dirt, 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 dirt in their little suits, and everything. The trains running on time and everything to the millisecond. And then the minute they get out of work, ripped to the tits in the streets in a kimono, singing. You had Saturn all day and Dionysus all night. It was the strangest thing.
Well,
Same
there's this
guys.
wild. Okay, when I've been diving into the sun cult, specifically the sun cult, and Macrobius really elucidates this. The sun, according to Macrobius, appears in three faces. Okay, in the highest sun, the most perfected sun is Zeus, right? The sun that we interact with, that we engage with, is sometimes called Helios, but is more often Apollo, the middle god. The middle god, the one that can carry you to the heights of the ideal, Lucifer, the one who reveals. And then you have the lowest sun, the sun in the middle of the night in the darkness, and that's Dionysus, the sun that goes and impregnates the earth and allows it to rise and blossom. He's the dying and rising God. So he is the sun that enters the underworld and is reborn as the child to come. And when you look at the Roman tradition, you can see it unfold in the Saturnalia. At the beginning of the Saturnalia, you have the ending of the evil Saturn, right? Saturn is the tyrant who's imprisoned, who wants to consume his children. So at the start of the Saturnalia, he's bound up in all of these robes. He's this horrible, evil ass. But what do? The Saturnalia is this rebirth and reconnection. You free the god, you unbind him. He gets to be this jovial, loving father. It's a return to who he was in the past. And then he's sacrificed, he dies,
I swear this
right?
is us when we go back to the four-dimensional calendar. Don't
Oh,
just go there,
yeah.
sing there. Sing there.
Right. Right. And then what you see though is Saturn is sacrificed right through those wax figurines. He's ritually sacrificed, and then he's reborn at the end of the Saturnalia as the child to come on the 25th, Dionysus, Plutus. and then the cycle begins. A new golden age
This
is
is to
bring
the same,
about,
but this is who
you know
dad would be if he didn't have to go to work, if he didn't have to go to war, if he didn't have
right.
to slave away. That's who he would be.
That's who you would be. You see the cycles of life, right?
Yeah.
You can see, and the Romans had this very, and so did the Greeks. They have this very nuanced understanding of these different, you know. Dionysus is the rebellious child. On one hand, he institutes the golden age, but he also, nothing gets built, nothing gets done, right? And then Apollo is the adult striving for artistic perfection. And there's so much beauty here, but what does it ultimately lead to often? Stagnation, calcification, a closing off of the mind in a creating of a pattern. And then you get Saturn, which is that now you're closed and isolated.
Well, and
You no
each
longer
each each
change.
element, each deity has the parables about what happens when they get
Right.
excessive and what happens when they get repressed, and
Right.
how to be all these at once. We have each one of them inside us, and
Right.
it's like this bagua of like you gotta give due diligence to the family, you gotta give due diligence to the farm, you gotta give due diligence to the library, in the temple, and and
Absolutely.
all they should all be balanced. And if it weren't just already a lot for me to figure out what day it is, which it kind of is, I think
Right.
it would be neat to do the Egyptian thing and use all three calendars. There's
Right.
something in your body that would be satisfied by each one of those.
Like
There's
this
something in
this
your body that's just waiting for it to
it's
be
wild.
like
It's
it.
it's wild to me that you bring up this creation of the calendar, because like it's something that I've been kind of just been doing as a part of my own tradition,
Yeah.
where what I've been doing, like, one of the things that the muse inspired me to do was to track the cycle of the moon and
Mm.
to really pay attention. So one of the things I do, and you
Well,
watched
because
my
you just
my
got
adoration,
married. You just got
right?
married. So if you don't track the moon, you're screwed. Yeah. Yeah, forget it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there is that. Luckily, my wife is good about tracking the moon herself. you know,
Yeah, but you gotta
so that's
know.
good. I gotta know too. Yeah, 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 yeah.
You're the one who has to get the chocolate.
Well, she makes me know. She keeps me up to date with everything, which it's important to know. Also, like
And it's
studying with,
important not just
yeah,
for the women around you if you're a dude, but
no.
also for yourself.
What you
Yeah.
realize when you start to study the moon, and people make such, they some people overreact or underreact, or they so much about studying the moon, you realize this energy affects
Oh,
your
that's what it
emotions.
was. Oh,
It
that's what
affects
it
you.
was.
Yeah, like we're right now, we're under the moon in Scorpio. Moon in Scorpio is heavy. Everyone is overly emotional. Everyone is sensitive. Everyone's got these big
And
gaping
if you
wounds.
don't know, you're liable to take it out on someone near to you and
Exactly.
think up a
Exactly.
reason for it. And even if you do know, you can slip and do that. And then you're like, oh shit, I wasn't going to do that.
Right. And like personally for me, like I'm a Virgo. I got the Virgo sun, Virgo rising. So when the Virgo moon hits, that energy hits me like a ton of bricks. All of a sudden, I'm the most critical, self-loathing person, and I need to go sit and be by myself. And it's like clockwork. Every moon in Virgo. And I find myself often even getting mad at people around me. And it's not about them, it's about me. I'm frustrated. I got to focus on myself,
it's
get out
it's
of my
about
way.
this
Yeah.
invisible ray of light that
Yeah.
is hitting your system in a certain way and making everything look a certain way. And
Yeah.
yeah,
And when you pay
this she's
attention to
real.
this, you really start to recognize how much of an impact this has on you,
And you
you know?
can is you could just let you start letting things be.
Mm,
Like, okay, I'm really frustrated right now. All right.
right?
Yeah, we're gonna breathe through this one.
We're gonna breathe through this. And in a couple, in 3 days,
Because
like the moon
it's just
changes every
Saturn
three
or
days
whatever,
roughly, right?
and it's no one's fault. And
Yeah, exactly. But it's like there's just been so many times lately since I started doing that where I find myself in a certain kind of mindset, and I'm like, why am I like this? And then I go, wait a second, what's the moon? Oh,
let
okay.
me check. Yeah.
Right? Like Aries energy is another Aries energy that tends to, you feel like I got to do something. I got to do something now. and then often you're in that rash kind of
Yeah.
abrasive mode,
And for
you know,
Romulus, that's when the year begins.
right? In
It's when
Mars,
his
he loves
balls
that
start to
energy,
itch and he can't sit still anymore. No, that is not the beginning.
right?
The beginning is way back in the rearview mirror, my friend. You just start unaware, right?
Right. But yeah, it's so incredible. And it's like I feel like so much, when you bring up the calendar stuff and we bring up the god, Janus is the sun and the moon, right? We're talking about with the solar
Janus
calendar,
is,
you
by the
can
way, where we
see
get the word janitor, also, who
the
is
cleaner.
who is the sacred vulture, who is the sacred custodian, who is the gatekeeper of every
Wow.
institution. And but this is how we treat Janus now. We discard him. We don't see him. We don't acknowledge him for the gatekeeper that he is.
Right. And we don't acknowledge the changing of the seasons. Like this is an ongoing theme that we've talked about where we've
People don't know why
lost
they're depressed and
the
it's like, bro,
natural
it's winter,
connection.
it's dark. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, and then like people well, people don't understand, well,
Or the other
you
way
and I,
around. You're South American friends and then it's dark in the summer.
you and I have a very different approach to most people because we are animists. So when we see the sun and the moon, they were already divine, and now we're
Yes.
giving them names, we're giving them a story, right? But for a lot of people, when you talk about the sun and the moon as divinity, it's like, what do you mean? How can this impact you? How can this be
Everybody's
anything?
like, they're not people. And you're like, yeah, they are.
Right? They're kind of alike. Everything is, that would, in my mind, the way that it just, I don't know,
And we
it just
also,
makes
as
intrinsic sense.
animists, we look at a calendar and we know that it's a faulty representation of all that is.
Yeah.
And the real calendar is a living, breathing thing, and the passage of time is real and it's the same for all of us. There's no
Yeah.
big split coming, by the way, where the serfs are on this timeline and then like people, no, that's some sort of neo-fascist new age thing. We're all on the same planet. We're all looking at the same environment. We're experiencing it differently, and it's a different year for a whole bunch of people, but it's still today. Like,
Right.
we know that we're all looking with the same eyes and talking with the same mouth, but it's gonna it's not real. We know our senses are limited.
Yeah.
All of human beings' senses are limited in exactly the same way.
Right. It's like, we can only really understand time as a relation to the objects in the universe around us, as us dancing within this constant churning, mechanism. And that's all we're doing is we're recognizing the turn, and we're trying to, all we can see it is in relation to, it just reminds me, like so many of us, we're all so disconnected from our bodies. We're disconnected from nature, right? We see time as this mechanistic, as this business
No,
job
like you're
orientated
saying
thing.
with your wife, it takes study and focus for her to understand her body as well as she does, because
Right.
we didn't learn that in school,
No, you
and
got to
so
map
she's
this
done a
stuff. You
lot
got
of
to pay
work to
attention.
get to where she's part of the moon
Yeah.
and
Well,
can
and
articulate it and all that. Yeah.
okay, I saw this article the other day. It was kind of interesting. They were talking about how a lot of women in artificial light fucks with everyone, and
And
it fucks
so
with her
we would
hormones.
be menstruating all the same time.
Exactly, because
Like
of
that
this
funny
artificial
comedian
light
that
and
says that
because
we
of,
have
like,
Bluetooth. He said you guys have Bluetooth because you hang out 3 days together and the blood comes together.
oh god. But, like, this is one of the things why a lot of modern women don't sync up, but if you were to take, like, 10 women and stick them in the desert where there is no light pollution, they'd all sync up
Oh,
to the cycles of the moon.
even in the office job, all drinking the same water.
Right. It's not a problem, Steve, it's just a fact of life.
It's kind of cool, actually. It's
But it's
easier to plan things as everybody's on the rag at the same time, but it won't. The office one won't go with the moon.
mm,
If you get out in the desert, everyone will start menstruating at the full moon and ovulating the new moon. But
right.
what we've lost is that we're not synced with the moon, but we're still synced with each other through the pheromones and the water we drink. That
Right.
isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it's wild stuff.
Yeah.
People are all far more connected than we think, and we impact each other on this kind of subtle psychic level that no one wants to admit. you know?
And you know, it's only in the recently in the past 20 years that you know that, because in the offices you never would talk about that.
No,
Whereas
that's
now there's a designated gay guy on chocolate duty and has to make sure that oh, it's coming, it's coming.
But this is all changing again, in our modern societies where we're no longer doing office work. Everyone's becoming isolated on the
Right.
home. Everyone is communicating with,
Yeah.
one of the harder aspects of the internet is trying to communicate with people because, like, if you're communicating through text, it's so hard to understand emotions. Communicating like this through visuals, we don't even get the full emotion and the full
Well,
connection,
and
the
in North America, the
ceremony.
architecture is not built to foster community, and
No,
so we don't have spaces like this. If you go to Italy or anywhere in the Mediterranean, really, you'll see the architecture of the Greeks and the Romans that they're doing this on purpose. They're manipulating people. They're providing public spaces, right? There's
right,
hangout. You have a whole different wardrobe in the in the Mediterranean still for loungewear, because
right.
you are going to hang out, and you're not going to hang out in your work clothes, and you're not going to hang out in your pajamas. You're not going hunting. Everybody in North America looks like they're going camping all the time, and they're fully not, okay? And but so you have these public spaces, and they're built acoustically also, so that a
Mhm.
town crier can stand in the town square and can talk loudly, and every house can hear. This is really annoying right now. You don't want that now.
But
You don't
back
want
then,
to
that
be
was
able to
needed.
hear everything. But back then, this is how it's organized. And so you have spaces in the home that are designated for chill out, and
Right.
so not having, and then they took that and put a church shower in there.
Yeah.
You know,
But you're right. You're right.
and that's where your
In
calendar is.
North
That's where
America, we don't have any.
your
Look,
clock and your calendar. They're right there.
the
No, we
last
don't have
free
any. We don't have
the
any, and
last
it's
free public space
intentional.
is the library, and the governments are determined to destroy those.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
Well, it's Central Park, right?
Yeah. If some cities have parks, but a lot of these parks, though, they're designed now to be all anti-homeless. They don't want you to hang out. They got time limits. If you're around there as a single man, they're gonna go, "Why are you here? Are you trying to mess with the kids?
Right,
Are you
right,
trying to smoke drugs?"
right.
That's the attitude that they have in a lot of these parks. They're designed only for specific people for a short amount
Well,
of
because
time.
they weren't designed to prevent that, because you can feng shui a park to where
Right.
there's just not a whole lot of space for that,
Yeah, well, and it's also it's a constant battle too. Like, I think about, like, in the town that I grew up in Ottawa. I remember there was this amazing park that I used to love that was right in the heart of downtown. It was in Chinatown, this place called Somerset, and it would always be propagated with homeless people and junkies, because where else are they going to go? And the government would go and round and beat on these people and scream at them and try to protect and
This has
gentrify the park.
everything to do with us not honoring the gods, not
Yeah,
even the ones we name our days and our months after. We invoke them all the time. Every Monday we invoke the moon.
yeah, yeah.
It's just all constant. And then we don't talk to them. We don't do anything with them. Right.
Right.
So if you go to the ruins of the Temple of Aphrodite anywhere in the Mediterranean, you're gonna find condoms and underwear,
Yeah.
because that's our best. That is really our best at honoring the gods.
Yeah. Making love and having
Yeah,
fun,
yeah.
you
And
know?
if you go to the other temples, there's gonna be full of syringes, right? And the glue, the Dionysius temples,
Right.
because we have suppressed all these things, and they are currently inhabiting their dark aspect until we open the door and let the light shine in again and invite them to play at something positive, instead of just embodying our deep dark subconscious repressed thing.
Right. We
you
need to
know.
have a balanced middle path. You can't be in this like rejection of nature, rejection of
Well, start
experience.
with me. Give up September. Let's start with giving up September. Everybody just call it something else and see what happens inside your brain, right?
Right. It
Call
is
it
so weird. Why
anything.
is September like September? It's called 7, but it's the ninth month.
Because later Augustus decided
Changed
to
it.
name July after Julius Caesar, who was already dead, and himself August. That's why. It makes no
Right.
sense. And this is coming after naming them after gods consciously selected from different tribes. You got the
Right.
first 6 months, three male, three female, and then you got 7, 8, 9, 10. Woo! Like dum dums. It makes no sense.
Why did
2,700
you
years of
stop?
this. We have
Yeah.
to stop. We have to conceptualize time differently, or we're going to continue to be frustrated with time, fighting with time. Damn it, I have to get up. Damn it. No, you're supposed to, this is supposed to be fun, you guys. We're supposed to be enjoying this. And these, so one of the first things you can do to enjoy is choose. Understand that you've chosen.
Right.
There's part of life that's happening to you, and there's the part of life that you get to pick and choose, set an intention. You're automatically happier if you do that. Then, if Newman's making any sense, then fast and pray, purify, get down to zero, get down to silence, and you're automatically going to be happier. Then,
Right.
when you go act, as a third thought, your action is automatically better intention, is cleaner, and you're gonna get better results.
Absolutely.
This
Absolutely.
is I'm positive that Numa's calendar is a path to liberation, and I have no idea where it's gonna go. But I'm so excited because I'm sure of it. There's no way that fucker starts with January and doesn't finish the stroke. There's no way. Makes
Right.
no
Not
sense.
someone that like if okay, if he's anything like the character that he's painted where he's this religious monastic, he's got where are all the other gods for his calendar?
Supposedly, they buried the books with him at his
Right.
request. I don't
Right.
believe it. Nobody writes a book and says that.
Well, I always think about what happened later. 500 years later, they stumble on his tomb. And then what do? They burn the Greek books
They
and then
decide
they
it's
keep the
too
Latin.
radical. It's too
Yeah.
radical. It would threaten the state. It would threaten the religion. What does that
Yeah.
tell you? It's a path to liberation.
Right. Right.
Otherwise,
There's
there's no
something there.
reason to burn it.
There's no reason to burn it.
Yeah.
And it's very clear that, Numa was in contact with the muse, right? Like he was inspired. He had connected,
For
and he
one
had
thing,
connected
you
to
could read.
ancient Roman
For one
religion,
thing,
realistic.
unlike Romulus, who grew up kind of on the street, he is the hooker's son, right?
Hmm.
And the shepherd. Uh, he fought for his position. He didn't know how to read. I'm pretty sure that's why he numbered
Right.
the months. Numa grew up in a palace in library. Spoke several languages and read them fluently before he was an adult, and so
Yeah.
he's
Before he runs
starting at
off
an
into the woods.
advantage. And as a literate man at that time, he may or may not have had access to their calendars. They're Egypt and Babylonia. They've been doing this already for 2,000 years.
Right.
How would he not have a book about that? He had to.
Right. And like they're right there on the Mediterranean. They're connected
Yeah.
to the ancient Greeks. They got the same
Then by
inspiration.
80 BC with the square pillar calendars, they've got the astrological symbols on top. The Babylonians have been there
Hmm.
and have downloaded the astrology equation, right? And then that's why we have 12 months. Yeah. But fortunately, astrology comes from the equator, so we don't have the hemisphere problems that we have with the lunar religions. My internal calendar has the seasons of where I grew up.
Right. Right, 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 right. Which is why it's, but this is an interesting thing, okay? I've been really lately connecting to a lot of English poetry from the 17th century, 16th century, when they're in the process of creating empire, and they're redefining the muse through an English perspective. She's no longer the nymph, right? She's no longer the muse. Now they call her fancy, the flight of fancy. And you'll hear about this. But then all of these poets start connecting her to the Thames River, and they start connecting her to Queen Victoria. They start, and look at that name, Victory, on the top of the hill. Like, this parallels the Roman thing. Rome
Now,
is
listen, when
victory on
they're
the Palatine Hill.
inaugurating Queen Elizabeth not that long ago,
Mm,
you gotta believe that there's all kinds of modern occultists and theater technicians, and these people are versed in the Greeks to be doing it the way they did it. They
yeah,
revived the monarchy after it was a putaneria, right? Like the
right.
previous guy turned it into a whorehouse, pretty much, and that's what you're looking at now, right? You got
Yeah.
the Andrew, formerly known as Prince, turned it into for Mountbatten. You got all these child traffickers in the middle there, and they're
Well, we're
trying
seeing the
to.
whole final,
They
I think.
want to re-pristinify the thing, but I think it might be too late. Like
Oh, yeah.
Queen
I think,
Elizabeth, okay,
you know,
maybe, but
in
that's
our,
why
in our
she
moment right
related to
now.
the African kings because she knew they
Yeah.
were the same.
Well, I look at the British tradition, the American tradition is a continuation of the British tradition. And so
Absolutely.
what I see right now in our global hegemonic kind of moment, right, is that the West, the greater West, is having its Saturnian moment,
This
right?
is
The
it, my
entire
friends.
West.
Everybody has figured out, if they didn't figure it out before, that this is we are on our way to hell in a handbasket.
Well,
And this is the end result of the patriarchal system. You want to jump off the train before it goes off the cliff. And that's what I'm talking about with the timeline. You
it's
want a
also
hopeful,
just
creative timeline that you are
right.
dancing with. You
It's
do
just
not want to stay on this September, October, November thing. It's just lies and brutality, and it's going to end.
right. I just see the repeating of all these kind of cycles. We were just talking about Dionysus as the sun going through the life cycle. Well, you can apply this though to the energy of the specific gods, right? Dionysus comes as the rebel who brings new life, new generation, new ideas and freedom. He sparks the golden age. If we look at America, America is founded in idealism. It's founded in the rebellious wildness, right?
They,
That's where you
but
get the
see,
democratic
they're
movement.
not even acknowledging the shadow aspect, which is that it's founded on genocide.
Oh yeah, totally.
Period.
And it's founded on the purging of the
How high do
undesirables
they
from the
have
earth,
to be to think that it's about
right?
hope?
But that energy shifts, it goes out of that rebellious mode, it turns into that Apollonian energy that reaches for the heights of the ideal. And we can see that, the West has now reached its apex, its absolute pinnacle, right? And what I
Now,
mean
what do
by
we have is entropy.
we have
This is
entropy,
we
we
have
have
president
Saturn,
entropy right now.
we have Saturn. And what do I mean by that is that now all of the false pretense, all of the ideals which were born in Dionysus are gone, right? They were already kind of a lie by the time you move into the Apollonian period when you're striving for the heights of the ideal. You're already recognizing that you're leaving those ideals behind. But by the
Okay,
time you're
you're
in
not
this
gonna
moment,
tell me that
you're now a
Lord
joke.
Mountbatten didn't know he was wrong when he went to an orphanage, to a group home to buy time with children.
Right.
Most Apollonian guy ever.
Yeah.
A murderous shadow.
Oh,
There's a
yeah. A
reason
murderous.
they took him out with kids on the boat because he'd been raping Irish kids. He'd been coming there on purpose.
Well, that whole
So you
system,
can't,
right?
that's the thing. These people are not that high. They
No,
don't really think that they're the height of virtue. They don't.
no,
They
but
act
what
like
they
they think
do,
that, they pretend, but no, they don't even believe it about themselves.
no,
That's what's
instead what
so
they're
bizarre
about,
about Americans is they actually do believe it about themselves.
well, yes and no.
So
Someone
deep
like
in
Donald
denial.
Trump, what we're seeing now is we're seeing that real shift, right? Well, where there's no more pretense. What are we doing in Venezuela? We're taking the oil. What
What?
am I doing about international law? International law doesn't apply to me.
This is
The only
entropy.
thing
This
that can
is
change
tiny
my
little
mind is my own
strokes,
mind,
one after another,
right?
stroke after stroke after stroke.
Right. So this is, in my mind, this is a pure pure Saturnian moment, right? We've
This is
lost the idealism, we've
Emperor
lost the
Nero,
artistry. We're
full
now
on.
just in that maintenance of power and consumption.
This
You're
is
right. And this
empire
also,
collapse.
empire collapse, but it's also that height of decadence, and that extraordinary decadence and that self-aggrandizement. That's where Gnosticism comes in, right? Because once you
Mm.
start to have extreme wealth and extreme power, then what becomes the problem? The problem becomes time. How can you buy time? You can't buy time. Saturn is coming
That's what
for you.
Jim Carrey said. He
You
said, "I
know?
wish." He said, "I wish everybody could have a bunch of money so that they could realize that it doesn't change as much as you think it's going to change.
Right.
Now it's about you and the clock."
It's about you and the clock. And this is what you'll see with these billionaires. They're all terrified of death. They're all obsessed with virginity and youth, right? They're all trying to stop time to make themselves live forever and to create this unchanging cycle. They're caught
Just
up
give
in
it
this
up.
narcissistic
They
ego
have to give it up.
delusion. They got
Just
to
quit
give it
it.
up.
Quit it
You've
with
got
the
to embrace
September
life.
bullshit.
You got to embrace death. You got to accept the changing of time, and this is the fundamental evil. Like when I look at Christianity, its fundamental issue is that it imagines a perfected reality where all of a sudden Jesus is a king on earth and we have this utopia. That's pure stagnation. That doesn't exist in reality. That reduces nature to a prison. Now we're all slaves under a
What do
king. We're
you
all,
mean? Do you mean I can't have a life without conflict, Snappy?
no, you can't have life without
Oh, I just
conflict.
want to be in peace with my cats.
There is no, this is the
No.
thing, like pacifism is a lie. We have to consume life. We exist in this chaotic world. There is no Aphrodite without Ares. They are twins, two sides of the same coin. To love something is to suffer and lose it, right? That's what it means to love something, in many ways, right? Like it's you have to have that totality of the experience. And what we see from these billionaires is their decadence has made them reject the suffering. It's made them reject change. They don't want to give up their power. They don't want to have to go through a new cycle,
Well, see
right?
that is also part of what initiation is about, and it's
Mhm.
and this is what I don't see billionaires. I see uninitiated men, and I
Right,
see them in every cast.
right, right.
In every cast, and what the initiations take you through is so that it's you.
Yeah. Yeah, self-realization, and they break the fear of death. The greatest issue for that plagues most people is fear and anxiety, right? We discolor our
Oh God, I
reality,
get
we
that so
distort
bad.
ourselves, you know?
It's menopause. I don't get depressed anymore, but now I get anxiety. It's different.
Right? But it's like so many of us, we color and distort our reality, we distort our vision, we subjugate ourselves to other people's ideas, to other realities, to other things. And that's really what the black magic is about by the elite. It's to distract you, it's to drug you, it's to put you in this energy of wasteful mindlessness where you're not focused, you're not learning, you're not engaging the self. You're in that pure. They want you to either be a
They want
consumer
you to throw away
or a
half the
creator.
year on cognitive dissonance and discontent. That's
Yep.
where they want us.
Yeah, that's where they want you.
And
They want you
apparently it's
completely
profitable. But how can you
caught
even
up.
think it's profitable when you look at what's happening? You can't really believe that, right?
But it's like, I mean, one of the more wild things that really been in my brain for a long time is listening to some of these crazy technocrat billionaires talk, reading some of their magical stuff, because these guys, they're all into that black magic of
What we
greed,
need to,
you
what we need
know?
to do is divest them of power, because you're never going to run out of tripped
No,
out dudes on a narrative. In every
no.
cast, I'm telling you,
Oh
there's
yeah,
really
for
poor
sure.
ones too.
Oh yeah. No,
we
no, no.
just
It's just
we
like,
just
but
need to
these people
save
got real
save all
power
these
to dominate us
fellas
is
from
the thing.
themselves and not allow them to become that way. We need a maximum wage.
Well, like
We
for
don't need a
sure.
minimum wage. We need a maximum wage. We are
Right.
not giving
No
you
more
enough
billionaires.
rope to hang yourself. We're
Right.
cutting you off.
I don't think anyone needs more than like $500 million, right? Like you
Nobody
can
needs
settle
more
with
than
that.
140,000 if everybody's
Right.
nice to each other and housing
Right.
is, you know what I'm
Right.
saying? You
You know,
cap it off. You don't give these poor guys enough rope to hang themselves. You don't give them enough heroin or money or whatever to harm
Well,
themselves, because then they're walking wounded and they go around harming everybody else. But
there's two magical ideas I want to ask you about though
it's
that are
really
coming.
about masculinity
Yes.
and the
Yes.
distribution of resources, which is
Yeah.
absurd
Decadence.
and got a
We live in
hundred
a
times
decadent,
worse after COVID,
right?
right?
We live in a patriarchal, predatory, decadent
It's
society.
this, it's this,
That's it.
it's the ideals. It's
But
what
I
we
wanted to
pray
ask
to.
you,
It's what we bow to.
right? I wanted to ask you though about, so within these technocratic elites who are redefining America and imposing this ideology upon the internet, what
Okay,
we're
they want
seeing.
four smart states and then we'll take one each. That's
So
what they're
you
trying to
so
do.
one version of this kind of technocratic dystopia is the Elon Musk version, and this got leaked through his 4chan account. So Elon Musk is a troll on 4chan, and 4chan lied to everyone and said it was an anonymous site. Nope, they were tracking everything like every other website, and then some hackers hacked 4chan, release the information. But the media never exposes these people, so a lot of this just got swept under the rug. But if you go and
They're
read
gonna
what this,
freeze his assets in France.
well, they need to. I mean, I don't agree with the why, because this is an extension of free speech laws and trying to silence. It starts
No,
with
it's
Elon
because he's
Musk,
a
and then it
dick.
starts with the
The
person who's
French
bitching
will
about their
just make
government.
up whatever a different excuse on Monday and Tuesday. Once the reason is that he's a
Yeah.
dick and they can't stand him anymore. So fuck
No, and
him.
he's evil and he needs to
Yeah.
stop. He's a fascist.
Yeah.
But like he laid it out though in his troll account. What did he say? He goes, I want to create a reality in which you all exist as part of my dream. I want to be the demiurge. That is the word he used. He is well read in this stuff, at least enough to know what the demiurge is. And he's identifying with that toxic war nonsense, you know?
Completely is completely lost his senses.
Yeah.
Can't keep a woman to save his life.
No.
Works more than a slave. He's a
Right.
very sad, sad man,
Very sad.
and and he's lucky to have the daughter that he has.
Yeah,
Whose
who
daughter's
he has
fantastic.
disowned, and won't acknowledge her as who she wishes to be acknowledged as. It's
But it's
ridiculous.
us. We have to divest them of the power. Like France
Yeah,
is saying, no, at a certain point, you can't. We don't want you. And this is
yeah.
what we have to do. And this is people doing this. This is human beings organizing and getting focused and setting an intention and purifying and then taking action.
But
And
this is where
and
that toxic
we have to do
narcissism
it.
and that technocracy is leading us to these people who want
Absolutely.
to be the demiurge, who
Yeah.
want to imprison us all. And when they tell you, you got to listen. The other side are the
That's the
crazy
real
Christians,
truth. When people
right?
tell you who they are, listen to them.
Right? And the other side is the crazy Christians, right? Like Peter Thiel is similar to Musk, but is not the same. He doesn't have this
I
demiurge
don't think
fantasy.
he's really Christian, do you? I think he's just
Um,
making it up. Like
it
people
could
thought
be.
Numa was making it up, but he wasn't.
Okay, so this is something we have to. You're right. Peter Thiel could be totally Machiavellian, and this could all be propaganda. But if we take him at his propaganda and we listen to that religious ploy, which many people are believing, he like Joe Rogan is now a full believer of Peter Thiel's nonsense.
That
Peter
fool,
Thiel,
whoever listens to Joe Rogan, oh please.
weak men, right? Weak
Sorry,
men
but
who feel
he's
emasculated.
had the American flag behind him this whole time. I
I
hope you
know.
guys noticed that, right? And I think it's the Jackson Pollock American flag. Jackson Pollock murdered his wife, by the way. You, you know,
CIA
there's
plant
nothing
too,
about that guy that doesn't scream. I didn't say it, you did.
right? No,
Who
like
listens to that guy? Anyway.
a lot of people, and it like my wife's extended family. There are
Mm.
people in her family who have been totally. I wouldn't call them Republicans. I'd call them Roganites. And they're like, And it's like it's really hard to fight against this ideology because it's an ideology of, well, that doesn't make sense to me, and that doesn't follow my emotional intelligence, right?
Well,
No amount of
yeah, but
sources can
this
be
is the
provided to these
thing. It
people.
doesn't make sense to me that the world is round.
Right.
All the
Right.
information my body's ever gotten my whole life says that is flat. Even when I get up in an airplane, I won't see the curve.
Right. That's so true. But we all know the world is round. It's just like we know
Jesus
the earth
Christ.
revolves around the sun, right? Like we
You know
accept
how
these
Galileo
things.
knew is because he's sitting under a tree and the sunlight is coming through. And instead of a straight line ray, it's it's circles. The
Right.
shadow is circles. And so the origin of the shadow had to be a circle. That's how he knew.
That's
He could
so
figure it
beautiful.
out with his senses.
you know it's like, and these ideas, they're not, it's like unheard of either. Anyway, I
No.
always think about, you know i I always think
My
about
grandpa
faith,
proved it to himself by flying around the world.
right?
Yeah.
And this brings up, like, man, there's so, but yeah, anyway, I don't want to get too deep into the philosophy. I want to focus on this Peter Thiel thing because it's so wild and of the moment. So what Joe Rogan and Peter Thiel are now promoting
Ah.
to billions of people, right? That's how big their platform is this idea of utilizing AI as God. AI or AI can now be the
It's the
perfected
Wizard of
virgin,
Oz.
right?
It's the Wizard
AI
of
can
Oz.
give
It's
birth to
Zardoz. Full
Jesus.
on. That kind of God.
Well, they're talking about, literally, they're like Joe Rogan in an episode that I saw, or I watched a clip on
They think
YouTube.
everybody's an idiot. That's the thing. They think people are so stupid.
They say, like, that the AI can be the perfected virgin, and we can give birth to a perfected being that is the consummation of all our ideas. And so this may not be Christ in the literal sense, but it is Christ in the
So
active sense.
here's the
And I'm like,
thing.
this just sounds like imprisonment. You guys
When
want
the
to create a
Roman
God that's going to
Empire
imprison everyone.
became the Roman Catholic Church, right? They take these spaces that are designed for people to meet and talk and exchange ideas, and
Mhm.
they change it. They put a clock and a church,
Right.
and they burn all the books except for one
Right.
for hundreds of years. They smash all the statues.
Right.
And
All
they
the art.
decide, they decide what time is. They decide what year it is. You
Right.
don't, right? But see, here we are. When you take a baby elephant, you need a chain to tie it to the tree. By the time that elephant is grown, you take a little rope and a little stick, and that
And it
elephant is
won't
not
leave.
going anywhere. That's where we
Right.
are right now.
Right. We bound ourselves, right? Because
Nobody
we
is going to
trained
shoot
ourselves.
you if you take back the town square.
Right.
The church they don't deserve it anymore.
No, we need to take it back. We got to build the
No.
temple
And
ourselves.
that's the thing is if we don't have a community space that we're offering, the people got nowhere to go but church. And they're not going to sit
No.
at home.
This is
They're
why
going to
I've been
go to
so,
what there is. And so we need to revive the old calendar. Oh, by the way, Serpent Mound, don't go there. Indians don't want you there. Do not go do your Wicca on the Serpent Mound. That's just the bulletin went out and I'm just referring it. But there are earth calendars that you can use and there are earth calendars you can make in your house. And it changes your the quality of your intention and the quality of your experience so that you can opt out of these diabolical Machiavellian plans to capture what your attention.
yeah,
They're capturing your attention and your intention.
yeah. That's what it's all about. And this is what people fail to realize. Like, I keep screaming this to everyone, but if you look at a figure like Trump, he's the best black magic or greatest black magician I've ever seen. And he is purely in that energy of all I want is attention.
I think he's I
People
think
always give him
maybe
too much
Bannon.
credit. He's not
Maybe
thinking about
Bannon is the is
anything.
the is the wizard behind the
Well,
clown.
Bannon is clearly the wizard behind the clown. It's just like Dugin is the wizard behind Putin. But what is
And
Putin?
Tatius. The
Right.
Sabine was the wizard behind Romulus. He
Right.
was a literate man.
Right. So
And
there's
he's the
always
one
these.
that got Numa in there, thinking that he was going to control it.
What Trump really is Trump is a carnival barker. He's a focal point. He's an idol. He's a demon. He's all about attracting as much attention to him as possible while no one pays attention to what everything else is going on, you know? And that's all he
He
cares
is
about.
the
Good,
end
bad, in between doesn't
result.
matter.
He is the end result of Romulus.
Yeah, right.
And we followed Romulus all the way there.
Yeah, Numa tried to prevent it. That's the thing, right? Numa saw the warlike
Yeah.
nature of Romulus and he
Yes.
tried to correct it. He
Yes.
tried to unite everyone as equal tribes. Like Romulus tried to make the Latins in charge of everyone,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
He raped the Sabines. Like that story is wild and
Nobody
people
forgets
forget that
that.
stuff.
And then
Yeah.
Numa is a Sabine, and you think he forgot that? He couldn't stand to
Heck
be in the
no.
same room with the guy.
No, of course not. This is why he calls him the warmonger, you know? And that's why, you know, like we've talked about this, but I'm almost certain that the locals killed Romulus because he was going to
Oh, it
keep
does
fighting
for
with
sure. His
everyone.
own people took him out because he was just drunk and bilious and screaming and barking orders that everyone just got out of control.
Yep. After he managed to, you know, the whole original thing is he was supposed to do it with his brother, and then he sabotages and displaces his brother. You know, he was always a warmonger. It's that narcissistic greed. I can't work with him. It starts there. You know,
And
like
the
why can't the twins
audacity.
work together?
There was no way that Rome could beat the Etruscans, but they're always threatening on everyone around them.
They were always threatening everyone around them, you know? That's what got them in that huge fight with Carthage where they almost got destroyed. It was their own antagonism, you know? And it only stopped when they went and they brought the mother goddess in. They literally changed their entire religion. This is a thing that the Romans have done several times, which I think is so interesting, right? They bring in the Pelasgian religion. They
That's-
bring in this unitary religion of Numa. They bring in the Sabellian religion from Syria, right? And then
And then
they
the
bring in the
Jutes adopt
Catholicism,
the Zoroastrian,
the Mithraic stuff, yeah,
the pre-Zoroastrian, yeah.
right. Well, the occulted Zoroastrian, the Zoroastrian that lives in the West, Mithraism, right? But it's very similar, connected. You know, it doesn't have that same ancient tradition, but it's of the same root. You know, it doesn't. You know, but Mithraism becomes connected deeply to the cult of Apollo, Helios, and becomes connected to the cult of Cybele. And what do the Romans do? They look at this and they go, Mithra is Apollo, is the sun. Cybele is the moon, is Diana, and these are both Janus.
Seven,
And we
eight,
just
nine,
united into,
10.
you know, we just united into our own thing. It's just like when Christianity comes, what do? Oh, Cybele, Diana, Magna
Same,
Mater.
same.
Now this is the Virgin Mary. You know?
See, it's really difficult to make your magic work if you're confusing one element for the next. So it's not to go into separation consciousness to go into a pantheon. It's to acknowledge that the one thing is made up of many things, many threads make a pattern, and many elements. You have to be, you can't just pound lead all day.
No, no, you can't just pound lead all day. But you know, there seems to be this wild shift that happens in Rome, you know, where in the beginning with Numa, you have this, and even with war like Romulus, right? It begins with this unitary effort, right? And it achieves almost a democratic expression under the
Wait,
republicanism.
no, he's paying people to be Roman from the get go.
Yeah,
Yeah. He's like, oh, hey,
come
whatever,
join.
come be Roman. This is a multicultural society from the Etruscans. You've already got different tribes. The Umbrians are your avos. They have an Umbrian face. The Etruscan face is different. They got these arched eyebrows, and they're completely different physiognomy because there's just they stay within their tribes there. And Latinas is Latinas,
Right.
and it's different. And then there was another tribe that was like, "Fuck you guys! They're always just fighting," and took off and to
The
Sicily.
Aborigines.
The Sicaris took off to Sicily.
All right. There's so many of these different groups. Like when you go
Yeah.
into early Rome and they talk about them all, you know?
And so
Mm.
when like Greeks get there and they think they're the first Greeks to get there, and the Etruscans have a blue who is pretty much like Apollo.
Right.
But wait, they got it from the place that the Greeks got it from that they don't know they got it from. Because their Etruscan Aplu is more like the Near Eastern Aplu, where Apollo comes from.
Right. You're
So,
getting that ancient
so
Pelasgian root, the
there's
early
so
pre-Greek.
much cultural exchange over millennia and waves of it that but Lydians get there, they don't know they're not the first ones to get there.
Right.
And
Right. And this
and
is why,
so
right, when we look at the mythology, we have the story of Saturn being cast down into Latinum and founding a city. And then, we have 1,000 years pass. So this is the ancient Etruscan origin. Then 1,000 years passes, and then you have the story of Carmentis coming from Arcadia with her son Evander. And then they set up on the Palatine Hill. They build Palladium. By the time of Romulus, Palladium is gone. It's a ruin.
yeah,
The Pelasgians are
it's
still there,
history.
but they have reverted to a tribal society, you know? And so then Romulus comes in and he builds another society on the ruins of these two previous cities, all on the same hill, like there's a wild kind of energy that people aren't aware of, but part of the problem is as you go back into this past, it becomes more and more mythologized, right? The Pelasgians we know are real, but it's also
Well,
disputed. By the
here's
time you get to
why we
Saturn, it's
just don't we
permanent.
don't have the data, and the reason we don't have the data is number one, we burn the libraries, and number two, we're still burning them. The
Right,
church
right.
doesn't want us to know anything about that.
No,
They
they don't
would
want any
love
of
to
this
keep
history.
saying that the Etruscans were just fucking everybody and going to hell.
Right, they're
And
just
and
pagans.
and it makes no sense. Half the Roman emperors were Etruscan.
Right.
Nobody killed the Etruscans. The first ones and the last ones were Etruscan. They're just like, okay, fine. If you want to call us Romans, call us Romans. That they were still in charge of everything. They still held all the land and all the wealth and all that. The Etruscans didn't go anywhere at all. And yet
No.
there's this myth that they were exterminated and oh, we don't know anything about them. And it's silly. And the problem is what? That they're matriarchal, matrilineal, that they had equality between the genders. That's the
It's
problem.
it's
That's why
also
they
that
want to erase the Scythians. But the
right,
Pelasgians, they were like this. And the reason I believe all boys theory is because of the moon mother temples.
right.
Because on every damn rock in the whole Italic Peninsula, if you rub the moss off, there's little steps. You can go check, there's millions of them. And on the top, where you wouldn't ever think to look, there's two bathtubs. One's got a drain into the other, and one's got a drain going down, we don't know where. And then there's little rivulets of water coming around the cucuzzo, just a piece of volcanic rock like it got spit out of the volcano. There's way too many of them. There had to have been a plan.
Right.
You do it like this. And there's
I look
not
at
one guy doing all this stuff. There's not one, the only unified culture that could be doing this that had the plumbing and they had some way they're working with geoplasticity were the Pulaskins.
And the thing that settles it for me is when I look at the religion of Numa and he institutes the cult of Vesta as the center of the
Yes.
Roman city, that is the most Pelasgian thing you could do. Their whole thing is the cult of Hestia, the sacred fire, building the hearth in the center, and doing those necromantic rites of communing with the ancestors. That's literally what Numa's doing. Now there may be
Now
similar
these
Etruscan and
now these
Sabine
water
practices,
these water
but
things, these bathtubs and weirdness, and then there's generally underneath there's a hollowed out area. There's a geo, what do you call them? Anyway, there's a drome, some kind of
mhm,
drome. It's a round room, a cave underneath that is a dreaming cave, and then there are niches where you lie down, and others obviously for candles, and the bigger ones for idols. They're all over the place. And they're not just by themselves. They're next to areas of tombs, tumulus structures, the calendars, these things, they're all built together. This is a
Right.
mind, this is a concept, this is a culture that
Right.
is disseminating information. They've got these plans. Everybody go out and chip away at the cucusa and make two bathtubs, make them exactly the same. They must have had a tool to make a tube that goes down and then it takes a curve that we
Right.
don't have still, but they did. It's got
Yeah.
that. It's like that bug. They call it a bug, right? They call it an
Mhm.
insect or a beetle, right? You've talked about the mysterious beetle that eats through rock and metal. And
Yes, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. So you talk about the shamir worm,
this
but
is a
also the hoopoe bird.
it's
The
a
hoopoe bird
tool.
carries this
It's a
weird.
tool that they had to carve pipes into solid rock. That's
It
what their
gets into this
plumbing
weird
was like.
magic stuff, but like, the shamir worm, is said to the hoopoe bird. Again, we're dealing with all of this weird magic stuff,
We don't know
and
what
the
it is.
Solomonic tradition is far later than the Greek tradition. When you go
And
back
they
into
were
birds.
already calling weird chemicals by animal names and stuff.
Oh
So
yeah, and it's also like the hoopoe. We're not talking about a bird. We're talking about a bird man. We're talking about a man who learned to speak to the birds. And
yes,
this is the thing. And
the
the
language of
whole
the birds. Yeah.
right, right. So when they're talking about the hoopoe, they meaning a very specific magical tradition that like some people connect to Afghanistan because that's where the hoopoe is really, really big. So this could be some kind of, the Greeks said the Arimapassians came from there and they're connected to the Scythians. There's all this weird stuff, all these horse peoples, but there's this weird thing about this magic of, the other thing with the hoopoe. Okay, have you read Ovid's Metamorphosis? Okay, so you got to check out the Metamorphosis because like
I've read
that's where you get,
Kafka's.
man, that's where you get some of the craziest stories ever, right? One of the things that is just so one of the wild things is there's this king named Tereus, okay, who's like a Thracian king, and he's the grossest kind of character ever. One of the most wild stories ever is about him. So one of the things that Tyrius does is he kidnaps this girl Philomela and her sister. He's married to her sister, but he kidnaps Philomela and he locks her in a prison and rapes her, uses her as like an object. He convinces her to come meet her, to travel to meet him, and then he imprisons her and steals her. And this is, the sister of his wife. What ends up happening is Philomela figures out a way to smuggle tapestries to her sister, and she writes and tells her through these tapestries what's happening to her. So then her sister, I think it's Procne, I'm trying to remember all these names, but Philomela and her sister, they team up and they get her out of this dungeon. And then they decide they're going to get revenge against Tyrius. These women want serious revenge. They decide
Yes.
they're going to. So, one of the things is he's got a firstborn son born of Philomela's sister. They kill the baby and they turn it into a stew, and then they force him to feed it, and what they force him to eat it, and then while he's eating it they reveal the head from inside the stew. This later becomes something that's used by Shakespeare, in his
Ew.
play in Titus Andronicus. But they force him to eat his own child, and then Tyrius goes into a mad rage and he's going to kill the two women. So the women start running away, and the goddess Hera intervenes and she turns them into nightingales, right? But she turns Tyrius into the hoopoe. So he's no longer a king, he becomes the hoopoe. Where this gets even weirder is then later on you get the story of Aristophanes' frogs, right? Aristophanes' frogs is the real. If you want to learn about Solomonic magic and its roots, read Aristophanes' frogs because he just lays it all out for you. You have this basically the story is you have these
You're
guys.
already tripping. That's the I can't. I, I can listen to some of it and I can understand it, but how you, it's too late. You can't be centering your thing around a king. It's
No.
just that the metaphor is lost on me. I don't have a little king in my head, and there's no tower here. You know what I'm saying? This
Yeah,
is
but it's,
it's mine more like a green pepper than any of that.
you're
It
not in
drives me
this really
nuts.
deep negative. So the whole thing that happens in Aristophanes, in birds, right? In birds, where you get the Solomonic magic on full display,
Mm.
is you have this character Piscatheterist or something. He's the trusty friend. That's what his name means. It means the trusty friend. And he convinces all these Greeks that they're going to rebel against the gods and that they're going to go to the birds and they're going to convince the birds to work for them. The birds are the daimons, right? And if they can get the birds to work for them, they'll build their own city that they're going to call Cloud Cuckoo Land, and it's going to be peaceful and free, and everything's going to be great. So, what did the trusty friend goes out and he tries to find the birds? How do I talk to the birds? Well, I heard about this king who was turned into a bird. Tyrius, he became the hoopoe. So they go and they find Tyrius, and
Okay.
he's literally like half man, half bird, and in this really decrepit state. But he tells him, "Oh yeah, I got the power. I can teach you how to manipulate the daimons." And he teaches them the language of the birds. So Piscatorus, though he's this interesting character, he
So that's
convinces
related to that. Okay.
he convinces the birds to stop delivering the prayers to the gods and instead deliver the prayers to him. And they're going to create an equal city where the birds get to be empowered too,
Isn't
called
this the problem you were talking about with Elon Musk?
partially. Well, where it gets even wilder. So what ends up happening is, so they stop getting the prayers, the gods. So the gods start freaking out and they want to destroy Piscatorus and they're going to come and kill him. But what ends up happening is, while the gods are distracted, no one is paying attention to Prometheus. So Prometheus gets out of his infinite torture. He recognizes what's
Right, right.
happening and he goes to the trusty friend. And he goes and he tells the trusty friend, he goes, "Look, the gods are freaking out. You're taking their power. They need their prayers. Without the birds, they can't get their prayers. But you can't defeat Zeus without taking away his central power. You need to get Basileia." This is the word they use, Basileia. This is the earliest version of Hera. Hera, who's not connected to Zeus.
The
Hera, who
basileia
is
is like a Pythia.
right, exact. It gets wild into this ancient Pelasgian stuff, right? Connecting to the Samothracian mysteries, right? The earliest iteration of Hera. They say you got to get Basileia. You got to free her from Zeus. Here's the things, though. What Prometheus tells him, he goes, Zeus is beyond greedy. What he really wants is the prayers. He doesn't recognize that his power is in Basileia. So if you tell him, I will give you your prayers, if you give me Basileia, you can win. And that's what he does. He goes to Zeus and he convinces Zeus to let him have the virgin. This is, Basileia, the nymphy. And what ends up happening, as soon as he gets the nymphy, he declares himself Zeus. And he becomes the king of the gods and creates a whole new reality where he's empowered. Now, if you take this kind of metaphor and you apply it to all of this city building, empire building magic, what are they doing? They're using black magic to imprison the birds. They're taking the nymphy and they're binding her to them in order to use her power. This is literally what Jason does to Medea.
Sure.
This is that Aphroditic magic of the jinx bird. You
Oh,
just, instead of the hoopoe, it's the jinx,
you know what I was just reading? Was it the Villanovans, the way they would pan for gold up in the north of Italy, where people still pan for gold, is they would put a sheepskin in there, in the
Oh,
river,
wow.
and they
Right.
would catch the gold. This is where the golden fleece thing comes from. And then they
Right.
would comb the gold out of the fleece.
It's so wild. Where it gets even, when you get really deep into the golden fleece, there's clearly that all those kind of aspects there. One of the wild things that I remember reading is that the golden fleece is actually related to a specific guy that that the king Aeetes kills and
Mm.
skins alive, And it's said that he has magic rites tattooed upon his flesh. So when they're calling him the ram, they're saying it's the golden ram. It's because of this particular guy was called the ram, and he was related. He used to be a ship's captain, and by killing him and skinning him, it's all this weird metaphorical language. And again,
This
it's
is what I'm
dealing with
saying.
this real
By the
depth.
time you think you're king, it's already over. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because you've no moral leg to stand on. It's so
no,
gruesome.
it's so and this is what I like. What I'm saying here is like this root magic of possessing the nymphy, of casting that love spell where you bind the goddess to you and you usurp her power. That's the greatest
This
evil
can't
there is.
happen in a dome home.
Right.
If you're living in a geodesic dome in a circular city that is all these circles around circles around circles, this it didn't happen for thousands of
Mhm.
years. It just didn't happen, and it's because people were perfectly happy. It's like the Mosul in China that they keep trying to offer them money and hookers and cars, and the guys are like,
But also, what
we
I keep
don't need
seeing,
any of that here.
what I
We're
keep
staying in the matriarchal society because it's happier and better and more fun. And we don't like you guys.
what I keep
This went
seeing
on
with
for
all this empire
years.
magic, though, is like there's this, Herodotus talks about this. He begins his history of the world with the abduction of the women, of the nymphs, right? And he says this is what starts history.
It
And it's
starts
this stealing
history. Yeah,
starts, and kings are born when they can
his story.
steal women's magic. And if we look at all these grand kingdoms, right? The empire of Greece falls, and then the goddess is taken by Rome
I'm
and
just
installed
saying,
in
good
Rome.
luck with that. You can wind up like Elon Musk with no women at all.
You wind up like Jason. Jason, this is the thing. All of these men who are doing this black magic, you become powerful for a time.
It
You
comes back
taste
to bite you in the ass,
you
doesn't it?
taste the height, and then you get utterly destroyed. And you're forced to live in the underworld again. You're never going to leave this limited realm. You're never going to experience greater life
I
because
appreciate
you're
a good
not
thief.
here.
I have encountered magic thieves,
Okay.
and some of them are very charming, very good at it, and kind of fun. And once you realize that the person is they want a magic trade, then you can make, okay, we can trade for it, and they're usually up for it. There are magical characters like this, and I don't mind a magical trade.
Right.
uh no one's gonna steal anything from me,
No.
but there's all kinds of trickstery things that are benevolent.
Oh yeah.
But there's all this imagery of decapitating the giant snake and stuff.
We've talked
You
about though,
wind
like,
up you wind up here.
right? We talked about this jinx aphroditic magic. It seems to be what sparks all creation, right? It's how Zeus kills Zagreus. It's how Phanes is ripped apart and falls apart, right? We are bound in this obsessive love, and then we destroy ourselves and fall into creation in order to try and experience that love, you know but that love in many ways is a curse. It's the curse of Aphrodite. We're the jinx bird that's been strapped to the wheel and tossed into creation, you know
Well, see, that's the thing with a pantheon. Is when you have a pantheon, there isn't a man who doesn't understand that he is Aphrodite. It's not her.
right?
This is this
And she is the
project.
world soul, right?
This is the projection. I know world soul. I'm just Leslie. And so you get this troubadour fantasy happening,
Right.
and it's just take it back home, your own Aphrodite, your own hurt feelings, your own person who boys like fancy stuff,
Yeah.
boys like jewelry, they like flowers, right?
So much of
Aphrodite is
gender is
not
just escape.
outside you just
Oh
because
man.
you have an anatomy.
Well, this is something that this took me a lifetime to realize, but identity is a spook. Gender is a spook.
That is
All
so.
of
It's
these are
geist,
constructs, ideas that are used
zeitgeist,
to imprison
and no
you,
less. They're time spirits. They're spirits bound by culture and time and location.
right?
Yeah.
They're just limiting.
Yeah.
You don't need to be caught up in such nonsense. Just
Telling
be
you,
yourself,
you call it
you know?
anything you want, and it'll be
Right?
better in September.
Right? Exactly.
Anything, literally, just anything you want.
So much about the magical work is about taking control of your own life, taking control of your
And your
perspective, and defining
symbols,
yourself
and
and your symbols, right?
the ones embedded on your soul because of your ancestors. It's neat to try to escape and be like, oh no, I tried to be a Buddhist. I promise I did, but it's cheating because it's not what echoes in my head. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so
Which
that's some kind of avoidance, right? The cultural appropriation of it and the avoidance that I didn't want to have to deal with the complexities of Jesus. I didn't want to have to deal with pedophile Christ. I didn't want to have to deal with loving Mary anyway, even though she's completely neutered and silenced. And instead, and a Buddhist who grows up in a Buddhist culture, this they go through this. They're not just, oh, Buddha, cool, he's nice. No, they're going through all this, right? And so,
like every
having
idea.
to, really, really own my own culture and my own symbols, and banish bibliocidal Christ. That's not any kind of spirit I want anywhere near my house. But it doesn't mean that I am not. So what are we swimming? These symbols have an impact on me. I can't
Yeah.
just throw them away or bury them or burn them and
No,
pretend they don't exist. They're gonna have an impact on me.
we
So I
have
have
to
to
utilize
own
them.
it. Own it.
Yeah.
The way
You got to
Numa
own
did
it.
when he said, it's January. This is the cross.
Right. But this is a wild thing. This is why you can see, a lot of people, we see this where some people have to reject entirely certain traditions. You can't,
Right.
I cannot deal with Christianity. I
Oh
can't
no, yeah,
deal,
no.
with
There's some
Islam.
people, yeah, they
I
come to
have
a
to
lecture
reject
when the
it.
lady was lecturing on the Black Madonna at Pantheon. She said, anybody who needs to sit near the door, I'm not gonna be offended if you have to leave because these symbols might trigger you. And I thought, oh God, that's so sad.
Right. But,
But it's true.
there's also this truism
But
though,
you
like,
can go behind that to your
yeah,
own ancestors. You don't have to go become a Hindu. Then you could what's before Christ in your ancestral culture, where you
every
got
image,
roots
right?
back there. You got what.
Well, the thing too is like we live in the universe is both one and many. We're all connected and all divided, and both are true at the same time. And through any image, you can connect to any other image, So through your limited self, you can experience the totality of the whole. You can
Even
connect,
with our limited senses, yes.
yeah, you can connect to it all. You can experience it all. You have that
Galileo
ability,
wasn't using a
right?
telescope; he was using his eyes.
But this is why we can have something like the Bible, which on one hand is propaganda, but on the other hand is inspired philosophy that's been twisted. The right person can look at that book and achieve a magical connection and can be enlightened through it. Another person will be
Use
imprisoned through
if
it.
that's the only book you have,
Right.
then use that one.
Right. You figure it
And
out.
people do sortes with it. They use it for
Oh
divination.
yeah.
It goes
Oh
into a
yeah. But
random page.
this is something you see a lot of people, right?
But let's face it, it's a chronicle of human abuses from the
Oh
beginning
yeah.
to the end. It's a
Oh yeah.
travesty of love religions distorted beyond recognition. It is
Yeah.
many things.
Yeah. There's a lot of wild stuff there, good, bad, and everything in between. But a truly empowered
I
person
just
connected to the
thank God
moon.
as it's not the only book I have.
Right, right, right. But I always think about like, one of the things I studied really in depth in university, right? I was really interested in the Caribbean, and I did a couple
Mhm,
papers, and I did a major thesis on Rasta.
mhm.
And Rasta is
Oh,
such an interesting
oh
religion
yeah.
because this is a religion in which you can't understand it except through extreme violence and torture, right? You got
Mhm,
to imagine a people who were stripped entirely of their
mhm,
culture, of their language, and like
mhm.
these are people from desperate tribes from different ethnicities. You know, when they were taking Jamaica, and there were
It was
Indians
brutal.
and
It was
people from
brutal.
across Africa. There were people from across Arabia, you know, and
There's
then all of these,
letters that they were capturing the ghost warriors and the Celtic priestesses at the same time,
right,
trying to
exactly.
destroy them all.
And they're forcing these people to become slaves, and they're doing it through stripping, you know, it's different. And when we look at Catholicism, right, and how the Catholics colonized, it was through incorporation. Your
How can
gods are
we be so
saints,
confused? This is the
right?
thing. We have to be hallucinating. That this hallucination, this game they've been playing for so long that you
Right,
actually think that Queen Elizabeth is descended from the sun goddess or whatever. And you got to be high. You know what I'm
right,
saying? These people
right.
are bad. These are bad, bad people that want to do
Yeah,
this.
I
Anybody that
know.
wants to be king of you is bad.
Absolutely evil, and it needs to be sated. But what we saw with Rasta is, you know, what happens when you strip a people of their culture, of their language, of their religion? It doesn't go away. It doesn't go
No,
away. They
no.
recreate it. Like, they took their slave document, they took the Bible, which is a force that was tried. They tried, the colonial masters tried to use this to beat the slaves down. And what did the slaves do? They saw themselves as the Jewish people. They saw a king in Africa as their deified king, as
Turn it
prophecy and
around. Yeah,
sign.
turn it around.
They used that imagery as a force of liberation. So
Yes.
I have to now confront this. Yeah, Christianity is evil in many ways, but people can transform any meme. They can use it. If
This
you're
is the
forced to
thing.
read one book, you can
You
make
don't
thousands of
actually
memes.
need an astrology chart or a
No,
tarot deck. You can use a
no.
liver,
Yeah, you can just use your eyes. You just need to
any
experience the
rock. You
world.
pick up any rock. It does not have three sides. Pretend it does. Look at one side, you'll see an image. Look at the other side, you see an image. And those three images are now your tarot cards. And you read them
Yep,
like that. You can read
yep.
anything.
The tarot is just it's a more advanced symbol system. It's a language in and of
It's
itself
fun.
that's been
It's
refined.
fun.
But you can do this yourself. I always tell people, what is the essence? People always overthink divination, and I try to bring it down to its core. It's two things: the invocation of the random and the asking of a question, and that's it. And oh, sorry, three, and perception. You invoke a random element, you ask a question, and you know, and then you receive it, you perceive it. So it's like you don't even need you can close your eyes, ask a
This is
question,
the
speak a word,
conversation.
and
That's the
receive the
thing.
answer.
You're
That's
not
it.
you're not just talking to the wall.
No,
You gotta know that this is the conversation you're having with
that's
something
also true.
unseen. This is something unseen that is responding.
Right. You have to, you know, this is also something that is an issue with our monistic framework of a lot of these Christian or you
Mhm.
know, monotheism or Buddhist or Hindu, where we reduce everything to this, you know, you have, in order to properly have a conversation with the self, with the muse, you have to externalize her. You have to see her as separate from you. You have to see her as having a conversation, of sharing things, of telling you things, and you got to be in that listening mode. But so many people in our modern framework, your mind is always just the self talking. There's never this period of separation where you're in conversation with another. You're always just existing within your own headspace. Everything becomes you.
You see,
And you
your
see these
headspace is
narcissists who literally
vast. Like
reduce
you
reality to
know
this stuff.
the difference in your head between the memory of a dream and the memory of something that happened.
Right.
There's this is not just, oh, in your head is this one thing. No, there's so much going on in your head, all kinds of things. And there's conversations with past selves. Everybody sits there and driving. I should have said that, and
Yeah.
then you have the conversation all over again, right?
Right, right, right.
And you're in this negative frame of mind, right? Or then oh, I'm doing it again. You flip yourself. Now this is another element. This is another element you're related to when you decide to say, okay, now how would I honestly, instead of doing that raggy thing, like how would I approach this differently? You know, and then get into a more positive frame of mind by choosing another element, choosing a different track, and inside your head, all of these states they have different sound qualities, different sense information. The colors are different. The memory of a
Absolutely.
dream that's a prophetic dream, the colors are different. than the memory of a dream. That's a digestion dream. There's
Yeah.
so much going on, and
Yeah.
you wanna explore and navigate and know what's in there and what is divination and what is me talking to myself. See, because this is exactly it. There's some stuff that, for example, Dr. Amen has come up with that later they dig stuff up and it proves it.
Right.
See, this is a medium. This is to the degree that the muse is
Yeah.
talking. This is what I'm talking about with this task that's put in front of me. We'll know in the end if I'm talking to myself or if I'm getting help by
Yeah.
what they dig up.
And it's always about too how deep you go into these things, like, you know, I mean, I'm pretty deep. I see the myths reflected in my own life. I look at my own
Oh,
life
yeah.
experience
Oh, yeah.
and I see the mythic poetic stories play out.
Yes.
Exactly. And I see
Yes.
myself called to fulfill the roles of various characters, you
Yes.
know? And this is how, like, this is why these myths are so empowered and important, why they keep being retold, because
And
they're
they can't do
initially from
anything about
experience.
it because the
No.
Bible is just it's just one story. And so
Right.
all of Western literature is based on the Greek mythology because
Yeah.
it's so much more vast and varied and emotionally and psychically relevant.
Right. Well, even the Christian stories, they're fundamentally just Greek in origin.
A lot of it's reworkings, yeah.
Right, you can go back and you can find those other elements. Like, I look at the story of Moses and Aaron and I'm like, how is that not Romulus and Remus?
Mm.
Right, how is this not, or you see these reflected elements and it's like, come on, guys. I know where this, like, I cannot, after falling so deep down, especially the Roman religion rabbit hole, I cannot look at Catholicism and see it as anything but Roman. Like, it's like, that's the
It
tradition I
is,
was
yeah.
born into. That's what I was baptized into. Maybe that's why the muse still speaks to me in this way. But what I see is the earlier
And it
ancient
was
animistic.
one family that
Right.
decided that Christianity might be more profitable.
Yeah. Yeah, Constantine. Well, it was also because a bunch of the mercenaries. So I remember in one of my first year religion studies classes, we did a whole deep dive into Constantine, and he's a very Machiavellian character. Prior to jumping into the Christian faith fully on, he had been flirting with Mithraism because there were all, as the Roman Empire is kind of in this chaotic mode, and you have these two desperate, Rome and Byzantium, they're not in real full conversation. So the empire is so big, it's struggling to maintain, and you have these corrupted emperors, and you got these dual emperors who are ruling. It's a real wild time. And what ends up happening is you get all of these mercenary bands that are paid off by various groups, and they become these tribal religious things. First off, you get the Vangarian Guard, which are Norse pagans. Then you get the Mithraic Guard, which are Mithraist, pagans. And then you get these Christians guards, and they're all running around as these various mercenary bands,
These are all boy cults.
all boy cults, all
Yeah,
boy cults,
and they're armed and they're
and they're
unhappy
armed and they're
and
violent
they're really dehydrated.
and they're running around the world without anything but murder and violence as their
Ah, I kill you,
occupation,
I kill you.
right? So Constantine needs to take over, or he wants to take over Rome, and he recognizes that in order to do this, he needs to get these mercenaries on his side, right? And he decides to go with the Christians because they're the biggest group, and his mother is a Christian, so he had an in to convince these mercenaries to join him. And as soon as he raises up the Cairo, all of these, so there's this famous story where he raises the Cairo and he wins this battle. Part of the reason he wins the battle is because when he raises the Cairo, all of these mercenaries turn on the other side and they follow him because they go, "You're the Christian, right? We're gonna fight against the pagans now." So much of him becoming a Christian was exploiting a violent uprising moment. There was all of this intensity. later on, when you get into Julian the Apostate, right, he tries to stop what Constantine started. He tries to go back to the cult of Cybele. He was initiated in Pergamum, and he's the head of the Cybelian cult and the cult of Helios. He also is initiated in that. And he tries to unite them as a single cult through his literature. And he tries to reveal a lot of the secrets because he says the Christians are taking our images and they're twisting it and they're desecrating it.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So that's why he writes this really famous it's a short pamphlet, but it's called The Hymn to the Mother of Gods. And he goes, should I just reveal the secrets? And he does. He tells you the whole story of Attis, and he basically alludes that Jesus Christ is just Attis. They've twisted the story, but they don't follow it fully nor correctly, you know.
Well, no,
And
and it wasn't the first time. I mean, the pharaohs took
no,
the beautiful, we're gonna go sing to the waterfall now kind of culture, and they manipulated mythology to cultural effect, and they used it to garner power and
well,
to hoard money,
one of the
and
wild things with we see too with the Sibelian cult, which is kind of so, and they're one of these things that empire tends to do too. Fascist empire tends to turn into this monistic thing. We see this in ancient Egypt with just before the Egyptian empire falls. What happens? You get the birth of Akhenaten, and Akhenaten tries to make everything into this patriarchal empire cult where he is the voice of the sun and he is the divine, well, not he's the divine
you know,
androgyne.
I believe that there was one theory put forth that because of all the inbreeding, he was born with some kind of genetic difficulty that caused him an awful lot of pain.
Right. I wouldn't be surprised. I
And
wouldn't be
then,
surprised.
and the portraits of him, that
He
is,
looks so
he would
alien.
appear to be a guy with the bone issues. But then
Right.
there's also theory that both he and his wife were trans, and they
Yeah.
depicted themselves as
And they
hermaphrodites.
describe themselves as hermaphrodite and as androgynous, and this was part of this
And
monistic trend.
so, yeah, and
So they're
it would be weird if it was all of a sudden symbolic, because in Egyptian art, before and after, they're very specific about which of 12 genders. And you can
right,
always tell it's not mysterious. And so then it's a weird parenthesis where you're going, was this allegorical and part of their monist head trip? Or did
right.
he seek a wife outside of the country? Because she was Syrian, not Egyptian.
Hmm.
And
Well,
and
this is
it's
where it gets
suspicious how
weird.
beautiful she is, for
So
example. That's trans woman beautiful,
also,
right?
she is Syrian. This is where the cult of
Yeah,
Sibley's
yeah.
headquarters is.
He's
Syria.
ta- he's he's not marrying his sister because
No,
he has figured out that it's the inbreeding that has caused his joint pain. But he seeks someone outside the gene pool, but also someone with a different cultural background, and perhaps also trans women.
right. But when I look at Akhenaten, I also see parallels in the Greek emperor, or sorry, the Roman emperor Heliogabalus,
Mm,
right? Who was part of the cult of Cybele, and
okay.
he gets deposed, but he was trans, or they were trans, at least what we would
Mhm.
now call trans. They identified as multi-gendered, as male and female,
Mhm.
and they were the head of the Sibelian cult. And there's this whole, they were going through the path of Attis, which is
Uh-huh.
to imitate the Great Mother and to
Yeah.
achieve that divinity. And
Okay.
so there's this whole monist thing that was kind of happening in the cult of Cybele and in Rome. And Emperor Julian elucidates this and exposes it fully. When you're talking about the problem with Heliogabalus is there's so much
This is why they're
anti-propaganda
still
against it.
burying it. This is why people
Yeah.
can't deal with it. They just want to bury it.
And it seems
Is
like Jesus
because
is doing the same thing. He's trying to be that
challenging
monistic
gender
biogendered.
norms has been, the linchpin of Western culture since the very beginning.
Yep. Yep. Well, since the agricultural age, we've been trying to break free of the patriarchy,
And
right? The
find it
patriarchy came
all
with that,
within yourself.
right? Right. And we're all imprisoned by this extreme gender dichotomy,
Yeah.
you know? And it's just so gross and egregious. I don't know. It's
There's
not
there
real.
is definitely a lot more fun to be had, you know.
And self-acceptance, right? Like just enjoy the, this was the thing with me, like growing up, it's like I just wasn't masculine. I don't like sports. I didn't like any of that stuff. I mean, I'm far more masculine now than I was as a youth because I had it beaten out of me and I had to learn how to mask, and conform.
Yeah,
And,
I was a tomboy till it became a problem, and then I
you know,
had to cross dress for less. You know,
this is this is the thing.
I don't want everybody freaking out now. You know, so I'll try to look like a girl.
Right? But they want to define you and impose these strictures upon you and tell you how you can live your life and how to
Biology
think.
is one thing, and then you have this total collective hallucination
Right.
that is a different thing. You know,
It's a totally different thing, you know?
there's your
And
3D calendar. This is real. The moon is
we've,
moving. The sun is moving. This is real. And then the minute it's 2D, I'm
you
like,
know,
what are you trying to do? Right?
I always look at gender. I like to look at gender through that anthropological lens and through, I look at all these, many of these early tribal cultures. And for the most part, when you look at tribal cultures, gender is defined by action. Most women are, when you look at the word woman in most languages, it's related to what? The making of thread, weaving. That's where the word woman comes from. They were the ones who wove, they were the ones who made the thread. And the men, they were the ones who went and hunted. This is what that's what defined those genders. And then when you get in more complicated societies, you get all these variations. You
Well,
get
that
shamans and
there. Okay,
whatnot.
that
And
when I was making this timeline, I also found out. Okay, right, Cheddar Man is black.
right,
Everybody's black.
right,
So I was like, okay, well, when did white people come on the scene? This is 8 to 10,000 years ago.
right,
Somebody got a vitamin D deficiency up in the frozen tundra.
right.
A whole section of people got a vitamin D deficiency. White people is a thing from 8 to 10,000 years ago, and not before.
Right.
Isn't
Because we
that
just didn't have
strange?
access to fruit in the sun. And so
It's
rather
a
than die, we
mutation.
evolved.
It's a mutation.
It's a mutation. And it's a random mutation. It's nothing that special.
And from 500,000 years ago to 8,000 years ago, there's no white people. Isn't that interesting?
Right. And now, we can't imagine it, like these gender dichotomy, these race categories have now become so central to how most people define and understand themselves in relation to the world. It's
And
such
then,
a
interestingly,
essential.
too, the women hunting is a parenthesis.
Right.
The women hunting is a thing that happens because the ice age and migrations, and then the men go a place and the women have to hunt. And so all these deities of women hunters, they come from, is a grand parenthesis, way longer than we've existed. But the female hunting god is not Cheddarman. That's another, you're already moving. Now
Right.
you're nomads. You're there's an indigenous person who is part of the land, and they have a really hard time leaving that land, and that's where they exist, and they're on that calendar.
Right.
Then the ice age made nomads of many of us, and then
Absolutely.
women started to hunt, and so then you get all this other cult of the female hunting god. And
Right.
so then you're in this period, maybe Orion is Diana. You don't know what you're seeing when you look in the stars. Who is the hunter in your family?
Well, and there seems to be, like, when we look at the twins, Apollo and Diana, right? Apollo and Artemis, there is this clear gender dichotomy that's at play. Like Artemis is
She's
called the
butch and
masculine.
he's
Yeah.
femme.
And Apollo is called the feminine. Like
Yes.
that's how
And
they are
they're
seen.
both queers $2 bills.
They're both queer as $2 bill. Like, I mean, it's
So
clear that
when you're
Apollo
looking at
prefers
the
men, but
queer
he's
element
touches
in the
everyone.
mythology, right? They will raise children, but these are not people who are focused on fertility.
Right.
And so, yes, the women who don't have kids, they are the ones more likely going to be hunting. And the
Yeah.
men who don't have kids, they got all kinds of time to sit around and play guitar.
Well, and you know what we see is when you get the women hunters, what do we get? We get the innovation of poisoned arrows, right? You don't have poisoned arrows until all of a sudden
But
the
this
women
is
start
because
using
the
their
midwife
magic.
is the
Midwife,
hunter. The
right?
midwife is the
When
hunter.
the midwife becomes a hunter, then they
Often doesn't have her own kids, hence has all kinds of time to go house to house and bring
also
all the
just
babies.
the reality of for better or for worse, right? Women are largely less physically able of men. So if you're trying to take down these big animals, right? Poison all of a sudden is a way that a woman can be more as
And
effective or more
the
effective
bow
than a
and
man,
arrow, the bow and arrow
right?
levels, yeah. But see, this is the big deal when the mammoth goes extinct
Right.
in Cheddarman time. Is the big game is not such an issue. All extinct if we ate them all.
Yeah, we
And
killed
now
them
we're
all.
dealing with everything they used to eat is overproducing. So now you got all kinds of snakes and all kinds of deer, and you learn to hunt other things. And so it's not that big of a like there's no elephant to hunt after 10,000 BC
That's true. At
in
least at
certain
least
areas.
in
Other
Asia and Europe.
areas they still are having elephants, Asia
Right.
and Africa, but the mammoth is gone. That the mammoth is way bigger than elephant, not a little bit,
Right.
way bigger.
Right. But all right, Leslie, we're coming up to 2.5 hours here. I don't
All
want to keep
right,
you too long.
we promise to cut it off.
A little bit earlier, it's always I always just rambling with you. It's always so fun. So I really
Well, it's
appreciate that.
fun to have a little more structure too.
Yeah, no, I really appreciated going through and talking about the calendar. That was really, really cool. And thank you for making the slideshow. We need to do this again. Um,
Yes,
talk again soon. So if you ever have anything you want to throw my way, yeah, we'll keep in touch. And
absolutely.
um, again, please promote. What's your email if people want to get in
Oh,
touch with you
it's
for spiritualist?
LESLIE dot Selene SELENE at yahoo.com. Leslie.Selene@yahoo.com. And I'm a full-time witch and I do private sessions.
Yeah, right. So if you want to, you need ghost busting, you need to contact the ancestors, you just need some spiritual advice, contact Leslie. This is someone who knows their stuff and I fully believe is the real deal. So thank you,
Thank you,
Leslie. This
dear.
was beautiful. And good luck on your journey if I don't talk to you before
Yeah,
you're traveling to Paris and then to Crete.
we'll
So
talk to
wild
you
stuff.
from Crete next time, probably.
Right. All right. Well, much love, Leslie. Thank you so much for this.
Love
And
you
we'll
too.
talk soon. Take care.
Ciao.
Bye.